Imagine getting dumped at the altar, and the man who shows up next says she'll marry me instead. That's exactly what happened to Elena, and somehow that wasn't even the worst part. Her sweet, polished fiancé didn't just ghost her, he framed her in a multi-million-dollar fraud and disappeared. Then Damien showed up like the final boss of bad decisions and offered her the most unhinged lifeline ever: become his wife for 3 years or get crushed by a debt she never created. So yeah, she lost a groom in front of 200 people and gained a husband who might be even more dangerous than the man who betrayed her.
What was meant to be a new dawn became a catastrophic failure. Imagine Elena Carter, abandoned at the altar in a borrowed gown, the focus of 200 pairs of judging eyes. Her intended was gone, her savings erased, and her little girl stood watching, lost in confusion. Then the cathedral doors burst open, revealing a man who embodied absolute authority, a predator in a holy place. This was Damien Volkov, and he was not there for the ceremony. He arrived to collect on a broken promise, and he would not be denied. The shock washed over Elena, the very flowers around her seeming to wilt, her nails dug into her palms, the opulent church and soft light melting into a surreal, waking nightmare, witnessed by all. The whispers from the pews swelled with every agonizing second. Reverend Morris cast another nervous look, perhaps his 14th, toward a side door. A strained smile fixed on his lips for nearly 20 minutes. "I'm certain he's merely delayed by traffic," he stammered, his gaze on the floor. Elena could only manage a slight nod, a sensation like swallowing shards of glass in her throat. In the first row, her 4-year-old Rosie grew restless, repeatedly asking for wedding cake. Beside them, Elena's friend Sarah's expression shifted from supportive to worried, then to a cold, simmering fury. The crowd's murmurs became audible complaints, laced with impatience and secondhand shame. Each cruel remark landed like a physical blow, a hot flush of humiliation creeping up her neck. All she craved was escape, to turn back time 6 months before she ever encountered Marcus Chen. She had been so vulnerable then, a single mother escaping a worthless ex, working to exhaustion just to survive. Marcus, with his effortless wealth and guarantees of a secure future, had seen her desperation and manipulated it perfectly. Their entire 3-month whirlwind romance was an elaborate trap, now sprung in the most public way imaginable. It was Sarah's voice that broke through the haze. After leading Rosie outside, she returned, her footsteps echoing on the marble aisle of the cavernous church. "My dear, I called his phone again. It went directly to voicemail." "His battery might have died," Elena whispered, her voice thin and frayed. "For an entire hour? Perhaps he was in an accident. What if he's injured?" Sarah's expression was hard as granite. "Or perhaps he is a gutless coward who was never worthy of you." As the Reverend began to speak, the great cathedral doors were thrown open with a deafening crash. Every head turned in unison. Elena's heart seized, a foolish flicker of hope igniting that it was Marcus. It was not. 3 men entered. The 2 flanking moved with the precision of guards. The man between them possessed an aura of such command it seemed to drain the air from the room. He was tall, clad in a fine black suit with a chiseled face and eyes as cold as a winter storm. He advanced down the aisle with an energy that didn't request space but seized it. People physically recoiled from his path. Elena was frozen, clutching her bouquet, watching his inexorable approach. Standing at the altar's base, his presence was immense. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, his expression a dangerous void. Those frigid eyes swept over her with disinterest before settling up the Reverend. "You may dismiss the guests," he commanded, his voice a low rumble with a trace of an Eastern European accent. "The groom is not coming," the man declared, his words as final as a gavel's strike. "This wedding is cancelled." The church's stunned silence erupted into a cacophony of sound. Gasps and startled cries assaulted Elena as her entire world narrowed to this one man. Sarah moved to stand protectively before her. "Pardon me, but who in God's name are you?" The man's cold gaze shifted to her. "This is of no concern to you." "The hell it isn't!" "Sarah," Elena pleaded, her voice a faint thread of sound. "It's all right." "No, it is not all right. This man just—" "Please." Elena's legs began to tremble so violently she struggled to remain upright. She urged Sarah to take Rosie outside before she completely broke down. Seeing the raw terror in Elena's eyes, Sarah finally relented, her daughter's voice asking, "Mommy, what is happening?" haunted the air as the guests began to file out, leaving Elena to face her utter humiliation. Within 5 minutes, the vast cathedral held only Elena, the visibly frightened Reverend, and Damien Volkov with his 2 impassive bodyguards. Volkov ascended the 3 steps to the altar, halting a mere foot from Elena. His proximity was suffocating, not from aggression. His face was unreadable, but from the way he viewed her as an object, an equation to be solved. "Elena Carter," he said. It was a declaration, not a question. She could only nod, her voice gone. "My name is Damien Volkov." He waited, and seeing no flicker of recognition, a shadow of dark impatience crossed his features. "Your fiancé stole from me." The world tilted violently on its axis. "What?" "Marcus Chen," Damien stated with cold precision, "embezzled $12 million from an investment fund I manage. He initiated the scheme 3 months ago. He falsified documents, created shell accounts, and wired the funds," Damien elaborated. Elena's knees buckled. She gripped the altar rail for support. "That's impossible. Marcus wouldn't." "Marcus did." Damien presented a phone, its screen illuminated with undeniable proof. Bank statements, transfer confirmations, emails bearing Marcus's name. The figures were staggering. "This is some mistake," she whispered, the sound seeming to come from a great distance. "He's a financial consultant." "He's a common thief," Damien countered, retracting the phone. "And he boarded a flight 2 hours ago to a nation without an extradition treaty." The room began to spin. Damien's hand shot out, steadying her elbow to prevent her fall. "It was not an act of kindness, but of practicality." "Sit!" The order was absolute. Elena's legs gave way, and she collapsed onto the altar step. Damien stepped back, hands in his pockets, assessing her with a cold, detached scrutiny. "You were ignorant of this?" he observed. "Of course I was ignorant," she retorted, the words sharper than she intended. I thought we were—" Her voice broke. She pressed her face into her hands, a desperate attempt to hide from the man who had just systematically dismantled her life. "What happens to me now?" she asked, her voice muffled. "You are now in debt." Elena's hands fell away. "What?" "Marcus designated you as a beneficiary on several accounts. You signed the documents 2 months ago. You must remember." And she did. A vague memory surfaced. Marcus in her apartment with a pile of papers, dismissing them as routine prenuptial financials. She had been folding Rosie's laundry, her focus on her child, not the fine print. "Those documents," Damien informed her, "render you legally liable for a portion of the stolen funds." The floor vanished beneath her. "How much?" "3 million." A strangled, hysterical laugh escaped her lips. I earn $28,000 a year. I have $600 to my name. That is impossible. I can never. I am aware, Damien interrupted, his expression unreadable. For that reason, we will discuss an alternative arrangement. An alternative? She looked up, her gaze locking with the stranger who had just detonated a bomb in the ruins of her life. What kind of alternative? Damien glanced toward the Reverend, who still lingered anxiously near the pews. Leave us. Reverend Morris started to protest, but one look at Elena's face changed his mind. He nodded curtly and all but fled into a back room. With only his sentinels at the doors, Damien refocused his complete attention on her. The money is of little consequence to me, he said. It will be reclaimed. This is about delivering a message. A message? That theft from me carries repercussions, that those who betray me will pay. He paused. But you are not Marcus Chen. To ruin you would prove nothing aside from my capacity to punish the innocent. Elena's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. So she asks, And what is your proposition? He answers simply, I will forgive the debt. For one fleeting moment, an impossible hope ignited within her. Are you serious? I am, under one condition. And with those words, the fragile hope was extinguished. Elena held her breath. Damien's cold eyes seemed to pierce straight through to her soul. You will marry me instead. For a long, silent beat, Elena could only stare, convinced the strain had finally shattered her sanity. You cannot be serious. I never jest about business. This is not business, and she retorted, gesturing wildly at the deserted church, the decaying flowers, the lonely altar. This is madness. It is a practical arrangement, Damien replied, his detached calm fueling her rage. I require a wife for my own purposes. You require protection from Marcus's actions. We are each other's solution. A surge of defiance gave her the strength to rise to her feet. I am not some problem for you to solve. I am a person. I am aware. And you cannot simply. People do not. Words failed her, fury and terror warring within. I do not even know you. You did not know Marcus either, he stated, and the devastating truth of his words silenced her completely. His voice was a blade of ice, each word a precise cut. He told her, Your ex made a spectacle of your ruin before 200 people. I, on the other hand, am offering you the unvarnished truth. The statement landed with the force of a physical blow. A searing heat flared behind Elena's eyes. A collapse she fought back with sheer will. She would not grant him the victory of her tears. What, precisely, is your objective with me? Her voice was brittle, thin as glass. A legally binding marriage. You'll reside in my home, perform the role of wife publicly, and maintain the illusion. In return, I erase your debt, provide for you and your child, and shield you from the fallout of Marcus's world. For what duration? 3 years. Afterward, a quiet dissolution. You will leave with a substantial settlement for your future and your daughters. Elena's mind reeled. It was madness, the kind of arrangement that belonged to fiction, not to her life. And your benefit in all this? She challenged, beyond proving some obscure point. For a fleeting moment, his expression darkened with an emotion she couldn't decipher. That is not your concern. If I am to be your wife, then every aspect of this becomes my concern. His gaze was frigid and analytical, lingering long enough to make her skin prickle with cold. Elena met it head-on, defying the instinct to look away. My profession demands a particular image, Damien conceded at last. A perception of stability, of family. A wife helps sell that narrative. So you require a respectable facade, she retorted, if you wish to phrase it so bluntly. And I am merely the convenient choice already in the appropriate attire. A muscle flexed in his jaw. Perhaps that is one of the factors. Elena folded her arms, a frail defense against the moment. The wedding gown, a remnant of a future that had just imploded, was now being worn for a man proposing an equally counterfeit existence. And Rosie? The question was softer now. Your daughter will live with us. She will be provided for and she will be safe. Safe from what? The faint hint of warmth in Damien's voice vanished, replaced by absolute frost. From the kind of men who view Marcus's debts as their own personal property. A deep chill traced its way down Elena's spine. Are you implying we are in danger? I am stating that you will be, should you refuse my proposition. He let the menace settle in the air between them. Marcus did not only defraud me, he borrowed from individuals who will not care about your innocence. They will only see you as collateral to be collected. You are threatening me. I am offering you sanctuary. Damien's tone was devoid of all emotion. There is a significant distinction. Elena fought the urge to scream that there was no distinction at all, that this was simply coercion dressed in a tailored suit. But his expression held no malice, only the cold, hard logic of a strategist. He was entirely serious. I require some time to think, she managed. You have 5 minutes. That is nowhere near. 5 minutes, Damien interrupted. Or I leave and you face the consequences of Marcus's actions alone. Her hands began to tremble anew. She pressed a hand to her stomach, attempting to quell the rising tide of panic. What other option was there? Where could she possibly run? She possessed $600 and a 4-year-old child. Go to the authorities and report what? That her fiancé was a swindler and she was foolish enough to sign his fraudulent documents. Hire an attorney? With what funds? What of my job? The question escaped her, but the answer suddenly felt vital. You will resign. I cannot simply. The income will be unnecessary. All of your needs will be met. I enjoy my job. It was a small falsehood. The diner was grueling, the wages pitiful, but it was hers, something she had made for herself. Damien simply shrugged. Retain it. If you wish, it is of no consequence to me. And after 3 years, following our divorce, you will possess enough capital to create any life you desire, pursue a degree, launch a business, or simply be. The entire proposal was too flawless, too tidy. There had to be a hidden clause. What is the print? Elena demanded. There is always fine print. The fine print, Damien stated, is that you will be my wife. That role has conditions. Public functions, absolute discretion regarding my affairs, and loyalty. Loyalty? Betrayal is not a possibility. His pale eyes held her captive. If you are disloyal, if you speak of my business, or if you tarnish my reputation in any fashion, this protection, along with every other promise, will evaporate. A cold dread coiled in her gut. I would never do that. Good. He glanced at his watch. 2 minutes remaining. This is insane. But her mind was already calculating, weighing one impossible situation against the other. Rosie's childcare costs exceeded Elena's weekly earnings. She was 2 months overdue on her rent, her car was on the verge of collapse, and now Dangerous people might be coming to collect a debt she could never hope to pay. 1 minute. I require guarantees, Elena said in a rush. Regarding Rosie, she is my absolute priority, always. Whatever this arrangement is, she is to be kept out of it and completely unharmed. Agreed. And I require a written contract detailing every single term. The debt, the 3-year duration, the precise settlement amount. My lawyer will prepare it, and my lawyer will review it. One of Damien's eyebrows arched. You do not have a lawyer. Then I will retain one. I am not signing another document without full comprehension of its contents. For the first time, a glimmer of what might have been respect showed in his eyes. Wise. 30 seconds? Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. This was a dreadful, irrational choice. This was... If I consent, she began, choosing her words with care. When would this take place? Damien gestured to the vast, silent church around them. The priest is still present. The license is on file. We could conclude this in 20 minutes. Today? Elena's voice fractured. You mean for us to be married today? The venue has been paid for. That is not the issue. She pressed her fingertips to her temple where a migraine was beginning to bloom. I cannot marry a total stranger in a gown I chose for another man. It is efficient, Damien countered. It is certifiably insane. Perhaps, he consulted his watch again, but your time has expired. So what is your decision? Elena looked at him. This intimidating, cold man who had materialized in the wreckage of her life to offer an entirely new form of damnation. She thought of Rosie, anxious and waiting outside. She saw the eviction notice on their apartment door. She envisioned menacing figures arriving, demanding payment. She recalled standing here just 20 minutes ago, certain Marcus was merely late, praying he would appear and save her. No one was coming to her rescue. She had to rescue herself. One final condition, Elena said, her voice more stable than she felt. I must see Rosie first. I will be the one to explain this to her. There is nothing to explain. She is 4. She is my daughter. Elena raised her chin, and she is entitled to know what is occurring, even if she cannot fully grasp it. This point is not negotiable. Their gazes locked. Elena's pulse thundered. She fully anticipated his refusal, expected him to walk away and detonate the entire arrangement. Instead, Damien gave a single, sharp nod. Fine. 5 minutes with your child, then we proceed. He produced a phone and issued a string of commands in Russian. Elena caught only 3 words: child retrieve and now. He ended the call and looked at her, expectant. You must understand, Elena said, the force in her own voice surprising her. I am doing this solely for Rosie's protection, not because I trust you, not because I accept this. It is entirely for her. Your motivations are irrelevant to me. Damien's expression was a blank mask. All that matters is that you adhere to the terms. And you must understand, if you ever place my daughter in jeopardy, I will devise new forms of suffering exclusively for you. Your power and what you believe you can do to me are of no concern to me. For the first time, the corner of Damien's mouth twitched. Not a true smile, but something close. Your point is taken, he returned. At that moment, the cathedral door swung open. Sarah entered carrying a sleeping Rosie, followed closely by one of Damien's men. Sarah's eyes were swollen from weeping, and her face grew hard when she saw Elena still with Damien. What is happening? She asked. His men are keeping us here without a word. It is being handled. Elena descended from the altar, moving toward her daughter. I will explain everything. Sarah passed Rosie to her with visible reluctance. The child stirred but remained asleep, nestling into her mother's neck with absolute trust. Elena held her close, inhaling her scent, feeling her small, solid warmth. Sarah, she whispered, I need you to trust me. Trust you with what? Elena, what is going on? I am taking care of it. She looked at her friend, the one stable point in the chaos of her life, the single soul who had never walked away. And I need you, right now, to please not ask a thing. Sarah's face curdled with confusion, her gaze shifting from Elena to Damien, desperately trying to assemble the fractured pieces of a nightmare. This has to do with Marcus, doesn't it? The realization dawned on her. What he did. Elena offered only silence. I knew he was a poison. Sarah's voice was heavy with old warnings. I told you it was all too perfect. You did, Elena confessed, her own voice a ghost of a sound. You were right. So what's the move? Elena's eyes fell to Rosie's slumbering form, her tiny fingers curled on her chest. A pink sleeper bought with hours of overtime. I'm going to keep her safe, Elena vowed, whatever it takes. She placed a kiss on Rosie's brow and passed her daughter back into Sarah's arms. Take her to your apartment, she instructed softly. I'll phone you tonight. I'll tell you everything then. Elena. Sarah, please, just trust me on this. Fresh tears gathered in Sarah's eyes, but she gave a single reluctant nod. Holding Rosie closer, she fixed Damien with a venomous stare. If you cause her any harm, Sarah promised through gritted teeth, I will dedicate my existence to your ruin. Damien's expression was a carved stone of pure apathy. The queue of people with that ambition is already quite extensive. Sarah recoiled, stunned by his reply. She turned, carrying Rosie away as one of Damien's men shadowed her exit. The moment the door clicked shut, Elena's gaze locked with his once more. Fine, she said. Let's get this over with before I lose my nerve. Damien gestured to an associate who vanished into another room. He returned with Reverend Morris, who looked deeply unsettled. Reverend, Damien stated, we are ready. I'm not certain this is... The clergyman's troubled gaze found Elena. Are you completely sure about this path, my child? No, her soul screamed, but her lips formed the word, yes. This is highly irregular. Life is irregular. Damien's tone left no room for debate. Proceed. The Reverend seemed poised to object, but a look from Damien made him swallow his protest. With trembling fingers, he opened his prayer book. For the second time that day, Elena found herself at an altar, in the same borrowed dress, clutching the same fading bouquet. But this time, the groom beside her was a man she didn't know, with eyes of ice and promises colder still. The Reverend began the rites. Elena heard almost nothing. She was drifting above her own body, watching a stranger consent to a lifetime with the man she'd met only 20 minutes before. Damien's vows were sharp and mechanical. When the time came for rings, he produced a plain gold band from his coat. Elena had no clue where it had come from. It was too loose, spinning on her finger as he slid it into place. I now pronounce you man and wife, Reverend Morris declared, his relief palpable. You may kiss the bride. A cold wave of dread washed over Elena. She had not considered this part. Damien's unreadable eyes met hers. He moved toward her. Elena forced her own eyes shut. His lips made contact with her forehead. A brief, sterile touch that was over in an instant. When she looked again, he was already stepping back. Congratulations, the Reverend muttered. Damien retrieved an envelope from his jacket, handing it to the priest. "This is for your silence." The Reverend grabbed it with a shaky hand and all but fled the cathedral. And then there was nothing but the two of them, husband and wife, married. Elena stared down at the loose ring. This morning, her future was with Marcus. Now she was Mrs. Damien Volkov, bound to a man she knew nothing about other than the fact he was dangerous and she owed him $3 million. No, the slate was clean. That was the arrangement. "So what is next?" she asked. Damien was already moving toward the exit. "Now we return home. I have to get my things, my apartment." "That will be seen to. My people will collect your possessions, but I need to pack some things myself." He didn't break his stride. "Anything of value will be brought to you. The rest will be discarded." Elena nearly had to run to match his long steps. "You don't have the right to just—" "I do." He pushed open the heavy cathedral doors. The daylight was blinding. A black sedan idled at the curb, immaculate and imposing, its windows like polished obsidian. One of Damien's men held the rear door ajar. "Get in," Damien instructed. Elena remained frozen on the steps in her wedding gown, gazing at the open door. This was it. The final moment to turn back, to flee to a world of lawyers and collectors. She saw Rosie's trusting face in her mind. Elena entered the car. Damien slid in beside her. The door closed with a heavy final thud. The interior air was dense with the scent of leather and a sharp cologne. The plush seats seemed to absorb her. The driver pulled away from the curb in complete silence. Elena watched the cathedral diminish in the side view mirror. "Where are we being taken?" she asked. "To my estate. It is roughly 40 minutes from the city." "Estate?" Elena turned to face him. "You have an estate?" "I do." "What is it that you do exactly?" The question had been circling in her mind since he first mentioned investment portfolios. "For work." "I oversee assets." That is remarkably vague. Damien's pale gaze locked with hers. "That is intentional." "I just became your wife. I believe that earns me a little less ambiguity." "You became my wife to resolve a debt." "My profession was not included in the agreement." Elena's hands tightened into fists on her lap. "Very well. What are the rules for this situation? You mentioned public appearances. On occasion, yes. Corporate events, charity balls. You will require suitable attire. I own clothing." His eyes raked over her borrowed, poorly fitting dress, pausing on a faint stain she had tried to remove. "You will require different clothing," he said, his tone flat. A wave of heat crept up Elena's neck. "I am capable of dressing myself. I have no doubt, but you are a reflection of me now. That carries a certain expectation. Are you suggesting that you're embarrassed by me? I am suggesting you are unequipped for the world you are now a part of. It is not a slight. It is a statement of fact." Elena bit down on the sharp reply forming on her tongue. On a logical level, he was correct. She possessed no framework for the life he led, but his assessment still felt like a cut. They traveled in silence as the city's towers gave way to sprawling suburbs, then to vast stretches of green. The road grew smaller, sheltered by ancient trees, and the homes grew larger, set far back from view. Elena's adrenaline had vanished. The surge that had carried her through the morning's disaster had dissipated, leaving only a profound weariness and a hollow ache. "May I ask something?" She finally broke the quiet. Damien continued to watch the road. "You may ask. Why choose me? If you required a wife, you must have had options in your own circle, women who already know the rules." "I did." Then why force this on someone like me? At last he turned his head, his eyes meeting hers. Because you are wholly incapable of forming an emotional attachment to me. The frankness of his words was staggering. What? The women in my world carry expectations for affection, for a share of influence. You desire neither. You are driven by your child's welfare and your own survival. This makes you predictable and, by extension, manageable. Manageable, Elena echoed under her breath. The word felt like poison in her mouth. This isn't about us. It feels as if it's entirely about us. Then you will have to cultivate a greater capacity for discomfort. Elena faced the window, willing away the burn of tears. No more of them. Not where he could see. The car veered onto a private drive where wild forest yielded to perfectly sculpted grounds. A structure rose before them. Not a house, but something akin to a palace. 3 stories of pale stone, with enormous columns supporting the entrance and windows that glittered in the afternoon light. Is this your residence? Her own voice sounded faint and distant. This is our residence now, Damien corrected her without pause. The vehicle came to a stop. A uniformed man opened her door before she could move. Her borrowed heels crunched on the gravel path. The entire property seemed to hold its breath, watching her like some immense alien creature. Damien rounded the car. Come, I will have you shown to your room. My room? She repeated, following him up the stone staircase. I assumed that we were meant to. This is a contract, Elena, not a marriage. The immense front doors swung open at his approach. My wing of the house is entirely separate from yours, he stated, and a dizzying sense of relief washed through her. Oh, that's good. The interior, however, was even more daunting than the exterior. Marble floors stretched into the distance, ceilings soared into shadow, and a grand staircase seemed torn from a classic film. It was a flawless, cold, oppressively wealthy mausoleum. A woman with gray hair pinned in a severe bun and dressed entirely in black emerged from a hallway. Sir, she said with a faint accent, welcome home. Mrs. Kovac, this is Elena, my wife. She will be residing here. Damien's introduction was utterly devoid of warmth. Prepare the suite in the east wing for her. For a fleeting moment, Mrs. Kovac's composure cracked with genuine surprise before her neutral mask snapped back into place. At once, sir. Elena will provide a list of items from her former apartment. See that it is handled with discretion, yes, sir. Damien then pivoted toward the stairs, a silent command for her to follow. Her exhausted body simply complied. On the second floor, they passed a gallery of gold-framed portraits she was too weary to even glimpse. He opened a door at the far end in the corridor. This will be your space, he stated. Elena stepped through, resisting the urge to laugh hysterically. The room was another world entirely from her previous life. It featured a massive bed, ornate furnishings, and windows that overlooked sprawling gardens. The bathroom is through there, he indicated. Mrs. Kovac will provide anything you require. Dinner is at 7, but attendance is not required if you are fatigued. Elena finally turned to face the man who was now her husband. So what comes next? She asked, echoing her earlier desperate question. Now, Damien said. You endure. This is your reality for the next 3 years. I would advise you to acclimate. He turned to depart but paused. One final matter, he added, his back to her. The ring is a temporary substitute. A proper one is being crafted. I will not be seen as a man of inferior taste. And then he was gone, the door closing with a soft click. Elena stood alone in her gilded prison, a captive in a wedding dress, gazing at the simple band on her finger. The pact was sealed. She had bartered her own soul to a stranger, a desperate gambit for her daughter's life. One cage exchanged for another, this one merely gilded. Elena's eyes flew open, her pulse a frantic drum against her ribs in a room that was not her own. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, a sterile white expanse above a bed that swallowed her like a soft abyss. A foreign scent clung to the air, lavender and costly fragrance. Then the memories returned in a bitter rush. The chapel, the man named Damien, a ceremony that felt like an execution. She sat bolt upright, the wedding gown a ruin of white silk around her legs. A glint of sunlight caught the cheap band on her finger. On the nightstand, her phone, a relic left by his men. 17 calls from Sarah, 12 messages. Elena's hands trembled as she scanned the words. What is happening? Call me immediately. Elena, seriously. Rosie is asking where you are. You have 1 hour to call me back or I'm ringing the cops. The final text had arrived only 20 minutes prior. Elena's fingers found the number by instinct alone. Sarah answered before the first ring finished. Where in God's name are you? I'm fine. Is Rosie all right? Rosie is wonderful. Cereal, cartoons. The only question is, where is her mother? The fury in Sarah's tone was a physical blow. I know how this must seem. Seem? This is a catastrophe. You vanished with a mobster, abandoned your daughter, and left me with 16 hours of radio silence after a message that said, "Trust me." He's not a mobster. The defense left her own lips hollow and unconvincing. Then what is he? It's difficult to explain. Then make it simple for me. Elena pressed her eyes closed, searching for a version of the truth. Marcus took his money, a fortune, and I signed documents tying me to a portion of his debt. A profound quiet stretched across the line. Then Sarah's voice, small. How much? $3 million. The sharp intake of breath on the other end was an audible shockwave. My God. Damien said he would erase the debt if I became his wife. Think of it as a contract. In 3 years, it ends. Rosie and I will be free and safe. The rationalization crumbled even as she spoke it. So you went through with it? You married him? Sarah's voice had gone unnervingly still. It wasn't a nightmare. I had no other option. You always have an option. Not when the alternative was total destruction and risking Rosie's life. A sharp edge entered Elena's voice. The men Marcus owed would not have shown this kind of mercy. Silence descended again, punctuated only by the faint sound of Rosie's singing. Your location, Sarah's voice returned, transformed. His estate, a little way out of town. Send me the address. Sarah, I'm asking you not to. Send it, or Rosie doesn't leave my sight. A humorless laugh nearly broke from Elena's lips. You wouldn't dare keep my daughter from me. Try me. The menace in Sarah's whisper was absolute. I have to lay eyes on you. Know for myself that you're not his captive. I'm not. Then let me see. I'm bringing Rosie. Let me see this place for myself. Elena's gaze swept across the cavernous room, a gilded prison from a life she never knew. All right, but you must swear you'll remain calm. My calm depends on seeing you safe. Please, Sarah, this is already impossible. A weary sigh crackled over the line. Okay, send the location. We arrive in 1 hour. The line went dead. Elena remained on the bed's edge in her ruined gown, her thoughts a silent void. Shower, clothing, coffee, simple rituals to reclaim some piece of herself. The bathroom was a sanctuary of marble and gold, larger than her former bedroom. The dress pooled at her feet, a discarded skin she hoped to forget. With its 15 fixtures, the shower was a puzzle. She turned a single dial until scalding water cascaded down, remaining there until her skin burned. She emerged, shrouded in a towel of impossible softness, to find fresh clothes arranged on the bed. Denim, a cashmere knit, new underthings, all were her precise size. The knowledge felt like an intimate trespass. How could they know? Who had been here? She dressed with a frantic energy, then hunted for coffee and a sign of life. The house was a disorienting labyrinth by day. Twice she lost her way seeking the main staircase, once finding herself in a library whose shelves kissed the ceiling. At last, a voice drifted from below. Damien, speaking in the same clipped, rapid Russian as the day before. The sound guided her to a dining hall built for 20. He commanded the head of the immense table, phone pressed to his ear, a laptop casting its pale light on his face. Dressed in dark trousers and a white shirt with rolled cuffs, he looked as if he'd been working since dawn. His gaze met hers. He motioned to a seat and resumed his conversation. Elena took her place, a phantom at his feast. From the shadows, Mrs. Kovach materialized. "Coffee, Mrs. Volkov?" The name was a physical jolt. "Yes, black." "Perhaps some food? The kitchen can prepare a breakfast?" Her stomach answered for her. "Yes, please, that sounds wonderful. Thank you." With a curt nod, Mrs. Kovach was gone. Damien ended his call, closing the laptop with a soft click. "You slept in your dress," he observed. "I was exhausted." "Evidently." He poured more coffee into his cup from a silver carafe. "I understand your friend is visiting, bringing your child." I wasn't certain that was permissible. "This is your residence. Your guests require no one's approval." To call it a residence was a bitter jest. It was not a home. Home was a cramped flat with a dripping tap and a yapping dog next door. This was a cage. "Thank you," Elena murmured nonetheless. Mrs. Kovach returned bearing a plate of food, so artfully composed it seemed unreal. Elena ate with a desperate hunger as Damien observed her over the rim of his cup. "My solicitor arrives at noon. The agreement requires your signature. I need my own counsel to review it. Counsel has been retained for you. He will be here at precisely 11:30. The sound of Elena's fork on porcelain was a shrill cry. "Your efficiency is terrifying. I do not tolerate delays." He rose, adjusting his cuffs with practiced finality. "I have matters to attend to. Call out if you require assistance." He had nearly reached the door when her voice stopped him. "What do I tell Rosie?" Damien froze. "Regarding this arrangement, your sudden appearance in our world." "She will have inquiries, of course." "Tell her the truth. We are married. This is now her home as well. She's only 4. She won't understand." "Then simplify it until she does." His tone was final, a closing door. "Children are resilient. She will adapt." "You don't know the first thing about them." A strange expression ghosted across his features. "Incorrect. I do." And he was gone. Elena was left with a perfect meal she could not eat, and the chilling certainty she was now bound to a demon. At 9:30 sharp, Sarah's car appeared. From the steps, Elena saw her friend exit, gaze up at the facade, and breathe, "This is madness." Rosie erupted from the car, her socks mismatched beneath her pajama shirt, her face transformed with joy at the sight of Elena. "Mommy!" Elena caught her in an embrace so fierce it almost sent them tumbling. The child smelled of maple and clean laundry, a scent of home that made Elena hold on too tight. "I missed you more than words, little one." "Sarah told me you went to a sleepover." Rosie leaned back, her expression suspicious. "You didn't take me?" "I know, my love, and I am endlessly sorry." "Is this your new home?" Rosie's gaze had already been captured by the sprawling structure. "It's gigantic." "It is, isn't it?" Setting her down, Elena felt Rosie's small hand find hers. "Can we explore?" Sarah followed them up the steps, her face a mask of bewildered terror. "This is diseased," she murmured. "This is utterly unhinged." "I am not blind to that." "No, you aren't, Elena." Her gesture took in the towering columns and the monolithic door. "People don't live in places like this." "It seems some do." The moment they stepped across the threshold, Rosie's eyes widened. "Whoa!" "My thoughts exactly, kid," Sarah breathed. "Mrs.?" From nowhere, Kovacs materialized, her gaze a swift, silent assessment of the guests before a practiced warmth settled on her face. "You must be Rosie. Your mother speaks so highly of you." The child, suddenly consumed by shyness, hid behind Elena's legs. "It's all right, sweetie. This is Mrs. Kovacs. She helps us here." "Would you care for a cookie?" Mrs. Kovacs offered, her voice a smooth, gentle persuasion. "I've just taken a fresh tray from the oven." At the mention of cookies, Rosie's apprehension vanished. "Yes, please." Mrs. Kovacs extended a hand. "Join me in the kitchen. You can assist me in arranging them." Rosie sought Elena's approval with a glance. Elena offered a slight nod, a silent consent that defied every instinct screaming about the vast, unfamiliar house. The second they were gone, Sarah focused on her. "Explain, immediately, what is this place?" Elena led her to a sitting room, the closing door muffling the cavernous echo of the hall. "As I told you, a business deal." "Business deals don't include mansions and house staff." Sarah began to pace, her unease palpable. "What does this man do? And don't feed me some line about asset management." "It's a cover. The specifics are not entirely clear to me." "Then get them clear." "Elena, you've attached yourself to a man you don't know. You are residing in his stronghold. You have a daughter whose well-being is paramount." "Do you believe I'm not conscious of that?" Elena's voice sharpened, laced with fear. "That I am not utterly terrified? But what alternative did I possess? Marcus left me in a $3 million hole I can't escape. Damien presented a solution. By placing you in a new kind of confinement. This is not a jail. I can depart any time I choose." Sarah halted her pacing. "Can you? Is that truly the case?" The query lingered in the air. Elena wished to say yes, but the agreement was too new. She didn't know the full conditions. "I need you to have faith in me," Elena pleaded, her voice a mere whisper. "I realize how insane this appears. It is insane. But I'm doing what is necessary to protect Rosie." Sarah's demeanor softened. She bridged the gap and embraced Elena. "I have faith in you. It's him I distrust." "That makes two of us." They remained that way, Elena drawing fortitude from her friend's unwavering support. Sarah had been her constant through everything. The pregnancy, the separation from Rosie's father, the unending series of menial jobs. She was the one individual who never viewed Elena with pity. "Give me your word," Sarah murmured into her hair. "If this situation turns dark, you contact me." No matter the hour, you call, and I will come and get you out. I promise. The door opened abruptly. The two women separated instantly. Damien stood there, still dressed in his suit, his expression a complete void. The attorney has arrived early. We must begin. Sarah's entire frame tensed. You must be the spouse. And you must be the friend. Damien's gaze shifted between them, a calculating look in his eyes. I assume Elena has clarified the conditions of our agreement. She informed me you coerced her into a marriage agreement. Sarah, Elena cautioned, it is all right. Damien's tone was flat, devoid of any feeling. She is merely being protective. He looked directly at Sarah. It is commendable, but unneeded. I have no desire to bring harm to Elena or her daughter. You'll understand if I don't accept that on blind trust. I am not requesting you to. His attention snapped back to Elena. The legal counsel is present in my study. Come when you are prepared. He pivoted and left, not awaiting a reply. Sarah observed his departure. He is unsettling. I know. Like professionally menacing. It is his eyes. I know. And he is now your husband. Elena looked down at the unfamiliar weight of the ring on her hand. For 3 years. The agreement was a behemoth, 47 pages in length. Elena sat in Damien's study, a chamber of leather, dark wood, and unread books, as her state-provided lawyer, an anxious man named Philip Reeves, guided her through each provision. Damien was seated opposite them, his own attorney beside him. He remained silent unless Elena posed a specific question. Clause 7, Reeves stated, adjusting his glasses. This outlines the financial terms. Mr. Volkov will furnish a monthly allowance of $15,000 for your personal use. All household, medical, and educational expenses are covered independently. Elena's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. $15,000 each month? Is that sum insufficient? Damien inquired, his tone neutral. That's more than my earnings over 6 months at the diner. You will not be resuming your employment at the diner. I have not yet resigned. A single brow lifted so faintly it was nearly imperceptible. You intend to continue working? I have not reached a conclusion. I understand. Elena set her cup down. The agreement states that I am able to. The agreement states many things. Let us proceed. Reeves coughed lightly. Clause 12 pertains to the marriage. You and Mr. Volkov will occupy separate bedrooms. There is no requirement for physical relations. In public, however, you must portray a unified couple. This involves physical contact when suitable. Elaborate on suitable, Elena countered. Damien's attorney, a woman with sharp features named Patricia Stern, responded. Holding hands, an arm about your waist, a brief kiss on the cheek, nothing that would create discomfort for either party. And if I consider all of that uncomfortable, then public functions will be minimized, Damien's voice interjected. But certain events are obligatory. That condition is not open for debate. Elena gave a slow, measured nod. Understood. Clause 18, Reeves went on, concerns the child. Rosie will reside here as her primary dwelling. Mr. Volkov consents to meet all her needs, from schooling to medical care. You retain complete parental authority, but Mr. Volkov must be involved in all significant decisions. What is defined as significant? Elena inquired. Selecting schools, major medical treatments, things of that nature. Elena looked straight at Damien. Why? because she is now in my care, which makes me accountable for her. He settled back into his leather chair. This is not an effort to take her father's place. It is a pledge that I will not be a mere shadow in her life for 3 years. The reasoning was unnervingly sound. Elena had prepared for outrageous demands, for control, possibly even for cruelty, not for this chilly objective logic. Fine, she conceded. They moved through the remainder. Confidentiality pacts, conduct protocols, and the final settlement after 3 years. A figure so large, Elena had to review it twice. This cannot be a legitimate offer, she at last let out. It is. Damien's gaze had been fixed upon her the whole time. That figure represents my payment for 3 years of your compliance. But for what reason? What do you gain from this? That is not your concern. It is absolutely my concern. For a brief moment, Damien's impassive mask showed a crack. It was not anger, but the expression of a man weighing the cost of honesty. I have associates who prize stability, he finally said. Family men. A bachelor makes them uneasy. A wife. A child. These things present a more reliable image. It was about his reputation. It was always about appearances. All the defiance left Elena, replaced by a profound weariness. She looked at Reeves. Is this a just contract? The lawyer considered it. It is highly unconventional, but from a legal standpoint, it secures your interests. The settlement is immense. The exit clause is airtight. And critically, it absolves you of any liability for Marcus Chen's fraudulent activities. That was the phrase that broke her final thread of opposition, so the agreement was sealed, entirely a matter of business. Indicate where I need to sign. Elena wrote her name 7 times. Damien completed the same act. The attorneys affixed their seals, cementing a 3-year arrangement. Congratulations, one of them said, gathering the documents. I will have these filed. After their departure, Damien poured a measure of expensive liquor. You maintained your composure in there, he remarked. I just signed over my liberty, she shot back. I would hardly call that maintaining composure. You just secured your daughter's future, he countered, reversing her perspective. He met her gaze over the rim of his glass. Your friend has not left. She is in the garden with Rosie. How could you possibly know that? She asked. I have security cameras, he stated, his unspoken message being that he observed and managed everything. And so the inevitable conflict ignited. Are you watching us right now? Her voice trembled, a live wire of anxiety. Is there a compelling reason that I should be? He returned. Elena paced, a soul trapped in a gilded cage. I need to speak with Rosie to somehow explain this madness. And you require my assistance for that? His question landed with the weight of a threat. You intend to be there? A proper introduction is far superior to her stumbling upon me in a corridor. His logic was a cold, impenetrable fortress. All right, Elena conceded. Let's get this over with. They found Sarah and little Rosie in the East Garden, a space of impossible perfection filled with statues and ancient trees. The child Rosie was lost in the simple joy of chasing a squirrel, her laughter a fragile sound in the heavy air. Her friend Sarah, perched on a bench, looked as if she were already mapping out her escape. She rose the moment Damien approached. Is the mission accomplished? It was a contract, Sarah, not a military briefing, Elena retorted. From where I'm standing, it looks like the same damn thing. Rosie darted toward them, breathless. Mom, look at all the flowers and Mrs. Kovac said there's a swimming pool, but it's too cold to go in. I know, my love. Elena knelt, bringing herself eye level with her daughter. Can we have a quiet, grown-up chat for a moment? A shadow of worry crossed the child's features. Am I in trouble? No, never, baby. Elena stroked her hair, a desperate attempt at calm. Do you remember me telling you I was going to be married? To Marcus. The girl wrinkled her nose. He had a weird smell. A choked laugh escaped Sarah, earning her a sharp glare from Elena. Well, things with Marcus ended. I married someone else. She gestured toward Damien, who stood apart, affecting an aura of harmlessness. This is Damien. The child appraised him with the raw, brutal honesty that only a 4-year-old possesses. You're really tall. That is an accurate observation, Damien acknowledged. Are you a nice man? I make my best effort to be. Do you like cookies? From time to time. Rosie considered this. Mrs. Kovac makes the best cookies. You should ask her for some. I will take that under advisement. The painful normalcy of the exchange was a thin veil over the terror Elena felt. Almost. Damien and I are married, Elena said, which means we must live here with him for a time. You, me, and Damien. Confusion washed over Rosie's face. What about our apartment? We won't be returning to that place. But why? This will be our home now for the foreseeable future. But all my things are there. My toys, my bed. Everything you own will be brought here. You will have a new bed, an entirely new room. Think of it as an adventure. Rosie was not convinced for a second. And what about Sarah? Sarah can come and visit whenever she likes. Elena shot a look at her friend, who nodded quickly. Anytime, little one. I'm not going anywhere. Rosie's gaze shifted back to Damien. Do you have any kids? Negative. Why not? It was never a strategic imperative. Oh, Rosie absorbed this. Are you going to be my dad now? The question hung in the silence, a heavy, unmovable weight. Elena's heart seized in her chest. She had no words. Damien knelt, lowering himself to Rosie's level. His voice softened, a calculated maneuver to disarm the moment. No, you have a father. I am simply your mother's husband. I will, however, give my word to protect you and to protect your mother while you are under my roof. Is that an acceptable arrangement? Rosie considered him with profound seriousness, then offered her small hand. Affirmative. Damien shook it with his own, sealing it like a corporate merger. Affirmative. And just like that, the crisis was averted. Rosie ran off to inspect a passing beetle, and Damien rose, brushing his knees. Sarah regarded him, her expression unreadable. That was surprisingly well handled. I am not a monster, Damien stated, his voice flat. The jury's still deliberating on that, she replied instantly. Sarah, Elena cautioned. What? I'm merely giving voice to what we're all thinking. Sarah collected her purse from the bench. I have to leave. My shift at work starts at 4 p.m. Elena walked with her to the car, Rosie skipping ahead. Are you certain you'll be all right? Sarah asked quietly. That remains to be seen. He isn't what I anticipated. And what precisely did you anticipate? Perhaps someone whose danger was more obvious. Sarah unlocked her car. Those are the ones you must watch. It's the danger you never see coming. You are not being helpful. My intention is not to be helpful. My intention is to ensure you remain frightened enough to stay alert. Sarah pulled her into a brief, fierce hug. Phone me tonight. tomorrow, and every single day after, until I am convinced you are genuinely safe. I promise. Rosie received a final embrace, and then Sarah was gone, her tires crunching on the gravel drive. Elena stood alone in the circular entryway watching the car vanish. The mansion loomed at her back. Inside was her new husband, a man she knew nothing about. Your friend possesses a formidable sense of loyalty. Damien's voice emerged from the top of the stairs. Elena flinched, startled by his silent approach. She is the finest person I know. That is a rare quality. What is? Authentic loyalty. Most allegiances are transactional. Hers is not. Every person has their price. Some are simply more costly than others. He descended the stairs. Mrs. Kovach has retrieved your belongings. They await you in your room. He then added, If you require assistance unpacking, I am available. I have no doubt that you are. He paused. Dinner is at 7 p.m. as agreed. You may join me or Mrs. Kovach can deliver a tray to your room, Damien stated. Dining with you seems the most prudent option to help Rosie acclimate. Do what is necessary. He was turning to leave when Elena's voice cut through the air. Damien. He stopped, looking back over his shoulder. Thank you for what you said to Rosie about not being her father. It was a statement of fact. I have no intention of playing house. This is a transaction. Clarity benefits all parties. The words were meant to provide explanation. Instead, they carved a cold, cavernous void inside of Elena. That evening, Elena watched her daughter sleep in an unfamiliar room, a space twice the size of their old apartment, with a fortress for a bed and an arsenal of new toys. Mrs. Kovach had unpacked with chilling precision. Stuffed animals stood in perfect formation. Rosie's dresses hung in a closet larger than Elena's last bedroom. A nightlight cast a gentle, ghostly glow. The scene was meticulously designed to broadcast safety and privilege. To Elena, it simply felt like being adrift in a vast, dark ocean. A soft rap on the door made her heart leap. Damien stood in the hallway, still dressed in his suit, though his tie was undone. Is she asleep? He asked quietly. Finally, it required 3 stories and 4 requests for water. The classic delaying tactic. And it is effective every time. A moment of quiet stretched between them. Then Damien spoke. I must discuss something with you. A knot of ice tightened in Elena's stomach. Proceed. There is a charity event next Saturday. I require your attendance as my date. So soon. The faster we are seen in public, the sooner the speculation will cease. He leaned against the doorframe, a portrait of casual command. The dress is black tie. Mrs. Kovach will procure something for you. I am perfectly able to choose my own attire. Not for this occasion. That crowd can detect a department store label from 50 paces. A flush of heat crept up Elena's neck. I have never attended an event like this. You are not required to do anything. Simply remain at my side and smile if addressed. That is humiliating. That is the agreement. His voice was empty, devoid of all emotion. You were aware of the public appearance clause. Elena yearned to protest, but he had her trapped by her own signature. She had signed the contract. She had consented to this. Fine, she surrendered. 1 week. I will be prepared. Damien gave a curt nod and began to turn away, but then he paused. You managed today with considerable skill, he remarked, his gaze fixed on the opposite wall. With Rosie, I mean, easing her transition. She is 4. Everything is easier for her than it is for me. Nevertheless, you are a good mother." The compliment was so unexpected it left her breathless. Before she could form a response, he was gone, his footsteps receding down the long hall. Elena looked back at her sleeping daughter, the unfamiliar weight of the wedding band, a cold pressure on her finger. 7 days until the performance, 3 years until freedom. She could endure this. She had to. For Rosie, she would survive anything. The week passed in a surreal blur of new schedules and disquieting adjustments. Elena learned that Damien departed before 0600 hours and seldom returned before 2000. She learned Mrs. Kovac governed the estate with the precision of a commanding officer. She came to learn the East Wing contained 12 rooms, most standing vacant, and that Rosie had already claimed 3 for her expanding kingdom. What remained a mystery, however, was the man she had married. He was civil during their dinners. On the rare occasions he attended, he would inquire about Rosie's day, absorbing her winding tales with an unnerving intensity. His voice never rose, no command ever left his lips, and he gave Elena no tangible reason to fear him. And still the chilling certainty remained that she was sharing her life with a stranger, a man who could ignite into violence with the flip of a switch. On Thursday morning, Mrs. Kovac materialized at her door with a garment bag. "For the gala," she stated, setting it across the bed. Mr. Volkov had a selection delivered. This one was deemed most suitable. When Elena slid the zipper down, her breath hitched. The gown was the color of a starless sky, its beauty so profound it ached and it radiated expense. The material was like liquid shadow against her skin. A glance at the tag sent her stomach plummeting, stunned by the sheer number of zeros. "I can't possibly wear this," she murmured. "And why ever not? It costs more than my entire car." A subtle tension tightened Mrs. Kovac's jaw. Perhaps it is time for a new car. But Elena was unswayed. "This entire event is an invitation for them to dissect me, to scrutinize my origins." And that, in truth, was precisely the point. The older woman's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Then you must give them no imperfections to find." A spark of defiance flared in Elena, a feeling that she owed these specters nothing, but Mrs. Kovac was already in motion. "The jewelry is also provided. I will see to your hair tomorrow." After she departed, Elena could only stare at the dress, her hands trembling once more. She had tried to push the gala from her mind, the grim prospect of being paraded like a new acquisition. Now, with fewer than 48 hours remaining, the charade felt utterly insurmountable. She found Rosie in the library, immersed in a world of her own making, on the floor surrounded by crayons. Damien occupied a leather armchair nearby, his laptop dormant as he simply observed Rosie's creation. "That is quite the colorful piece," he remarked. "It's a dragon," Rosie corrected him with authority. "But he's a good one, not a mean one." "Understood. And does this magnificent dragon possess a name?" "Steve." Damien's expression remained perfectly grave. "Steve is a formidable name for a dragon." Elena cleared her throat, announcing her presence. Both of their heads turned. "I have to speak with you," she said to Damien, "about tomorrow." He closed his laptop with a quiet snap. "Rosie, could you grant us a moment?" "Can I continue my drawing?" "Of course." The child immediately returned to her work. Damien rose and guided Elena to a far corner of the cavernous room. "What is it?" he inquired. "I cannot perform my role tomorrow evening." The admission tumbled out. I don't understand the rules of this world. I don't know how to behave. I will only humiliate you. No, you will not. How can you be so certain? Your sole responsibility is to remain by my side and allow me to manage all conversation. He presented the directives like a commander outlining a critical operation. If you are asked a question, answer truthfully but with brevity. Offer nothing more, and make no attempts to forge friendships. And if they ask how we came to know each other, you will say we have mutual friends. The vagueness of it discourages further inquiry. Elena folded her arms, a futile attempt to contain the anxiety quaking inside her. What if someone recognizes me from my previous life? That is exceedingly improbable. The sort of people who attend these events do not frequent those kinds of establishments. The remark was intended as reassurance, but it only served as a cruel reminder of her status as an interloper. I am going to be a catastrophe for you, she whispered. He erased the space between them, standing so near she was forced to tilt her head back. Consider this, he said, his voice a low vibration. You endured Marcus abandoning you before 200 guests. You entered this contract to shield your daughter. You are navigating a terrifying agreement as if it were a game of chess. You possess more fortitude than you realize. One evening among hollow aristocrats will not be your undoing. Elena could only stare, unsettled by the raw conviction in his voice. Is that what you truly believe? I do not waste breath on words I do not mean. She yearned to take comfort in his words, but the fear remained coiled deep within her. But what if I still fail? Then we shall navigate the consequences of that failure together. He stepped back, reestablishing the formal distance between them. Cease anticipating disaster. It is an unbecoming trait. The insult was sharp, yet it sliced through the fog of her panic. Elena drew a deep breath and then another. Fine, she conceded. I will try. Good. He consulted his watch. I have a conference call in 10 minutes. Is there anything else? No, that was all. He offered a curt nod and departed, laptop in hand. Elena sank to the floor beside Rosie, who was now sketching a family. Who is this? Elena asked, gesturing to a stick figure with bright yellow hair. That's you, Mommy. And this one? That's me. Rosie added more purple to the small figure's dress. And that is Damien. The third figure stood apart from them, tall and rendered entirely in shadow. Rosie had given him no mouth. Is that how you see him? Elena asked gently, as if he isn't really with us. Rosie offered a small shrug. He is nice, but he is not my daddy. He is just here. The child's assessment was devastating in its simple clarity. It was a perfect summary of his role, a fixture in the landscape of their lives, but not a member of their family. Do you like him? Elena ventured. Rosie considered the question with profound seriousness. He does not yell, and he allows me to draw in the library. Yesterday, he showed me how the fountain operates. She returned to her drawing. I like Mrs. Kovach more, though. She prepares grilled cheese in the proper manner. A genuine small laugh escaped Elena. And what is the proper manner? The cheese must be completely melted, and the bread must be perfectly crisp. That is, unequivocally, the only way. They sat in a companionable silence, drawing. Beyond the towering windows, the afternoon light filtered softly through the trees. The tranquility of the moment was a sudden, sharp ache in Elena's chest. She considered what this life might be, this house, this security, this freedom from financial worry. if it were a reality instead of an ornate, gilded prison. Later that evening, Damien introduced the one topic Elena had been dreading. "I have engaged a tutor for Rosie," he announced while slicing his steak. "She will begin next week." Elena's fork halted midair. "What?" "A tutor for foundational academics, reading, and elementary mathematics. She is 4, which is the ideal age to establish an advantage before formal schooling. She does not require a tutor. She knows her alphabet and can count to 20. She is progressing wonderfully." Damien set down his silverware. "I am not suggesting otherwise. I am providing her with an edge. An edge for which I never asked. The agreement stipulates that I am responsible for her education. This falls under that purview." Elena's hand tightened around her fork. "You should have consulted me first." "I am consulting you now." "This is not a consultation, this is a declaration of what will occur." Their gazes clashed across the dining table. Sensing the abrupt shift in atmosphere, Rosie's small voice broke the silence. "Are you two fighting?" she asked. "No, sweetie," Elena replied instantly. "We are just talking." "It sounds like a fight." "I promise you it is not." The murderous look Elena directed at Damien told a different story. A flicker of disquiet crossed his features. "Your mother and I simply have differing views on what is best for you, that is all." "Oh," Rosie said, nudging food around her plate. "I do not like it when you are angry with each other." "We are not angry, Ace," Damien lied, though his tone was gentle. After dinner, once Rosie was sound asleep, Elena located Damien in his office. Knocking on the open door, she stated coldly, "We must establish some ground rules." He glanced up from his book. "Such as?" "Such as?" "You do not make unilateral decisions of this magnitude regarding Rosie without my involvement. The contract is quite specific on this point." "Major decisions require my consultation, he recited. "A private tutor does not constitute a major decision. From my perspective, it most certainly does." Elena advanced into the room, refusing to be cowed by its opulent intimidation. "I am her mother. I have a voice in her upbringing. I am not attempting to remove that from you." "Then cease behaving as though you alone know her needs after a single week." Damien closed the file on his desk. "You are correct. I should have discussed it with you beforehand." His swift capitulation disarmed her completely. "Oh, very well. But I maintain that a tutor is a sound idea. This estate is isolated. She requires interaction with more people than just you and Mrs. Kovach." "She has Sarah." "Sarah has a full-time profession." "Then I will enroll her in a preschool." "In the city, that is an hour's journey in each direction." Elena had not considered that. The mansion's seclusion, once a minor detail, now felt like a fortress wall. "There must be something nearer," she countered. "There is not of a caliber sufficient for her." Damien rose from behind his desk, his presence seeming to shrink the expansive room. "The tutor I have selected is exceptional, a retired elementary school educator specializing in early childhood development. She can visit 3 times a week for 2-hour sessions. We will allow Rosie to meet her first to gauge their rapport. If it is an unsuitable match, we will find another." His logic was an impenetrable, infuriating fortress. Elena wanted to argue for this principle of it, but she had no ammunition. "Fine," she bit out. "But I will vet this woman myself before she is ever alone with my daughter." "Of course." "And if I deem her unfit, she is dismissed." "Absolutely. Elena turned to depart, and then paused. Why are you doing all of this? This degree of focus on her education, I mean. This entire arrangement is temporary. We will be gone in 3 years. A strange, inscrutable expression crossed Damien's face. 3 years is a lifetime to a child. I prefer her time here be beneficial, not simply an ordeal to be endured. That almost sounds compassionate. Do not appear so shocked. I am still attempting to understand you as well. Good luck with that endeavor. The faintest trace of a smile touched his lips. I have been attempting the same with myself for 36 years with no success. It was the first sign of humor she had witnessed from him, a hairline fracture in the stone facade. Elena almost smiled in return. I should probably retire. Tomorrow will be demanding. Try to get some sleep. You will need your fortitude for the gala. That single word brought back the chilling dread. Ugh, the gala. I can hardly manage my enthusiasm. You will endure it, Elena. The way he spoke her name sent a strange, perilous tremor through her. She extinguished it quickly, turning from him before he could notice the warmth rising in her cheeks. Saturday arrived far too quickly. Elena passed the morning with Rosie in the gardens, a futile effort to distract from the impending ordeal. The gown, the critical eyes, the role she was forced to play. At 4 o'clock, Mrs. Kovac announced it was time. Does this truly require 3 hours? Elena protested. If we are fortunate, Mrs. Kovac escorted her to the adjoining bathroom to start the transformation. We will start with a bath. The oils are in the cabinet. Please use the lavender. Elena became defensive. I am capable of bathing myself. But do you know how to bathe in a way that erases all evidence of a difficult existence? Mrs. Kovac lifted a brow. That is our goal. The water was soothing, but Elena felt utterly foolish soaking in scented oils while Mrs. Kovac arranged cosmetics like a surgeon preparing instruments. Afterward, robed in a garment worth more than her former life, Elena examined her reflection. You have a solid base, Mrs. Kovac noted, applying a cream. Strong bone definition. We will accentuate that. All I perceive is fatigue. All women are fatigued. That is what cosmetics are designed for. She angled Elena's chin upward. Be still. The entire procedure was an intricate ritual. Layers of primers, concealers, powders, and shades she never knew existed. Mrs. Kovac worked with an artist's precision, stepping back periodically to assess her creation. In a moment of quiet, a question bloomed. May I ask you something? Elena's voice was soft. You may. How many years have you been with Damien? Mrs. Kovac's hands remained steady, a surgeon's calm. 8 years. And what is he like as an employer? He expects perfection and is demanding, but his fairness is absolute. He pays for the excellence he requires. She reached for a different brush. What prompts your question? I'm merely trying to see past the walls he builds. He's an enigma. Mr. Volkov is a man who guards his privacy fiercely. It is his nature. The older woman's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. But he is not a cruel man. He protects what belongs to him. I don't belong to him. Don't you? You wear his ring. You dwell in his home. His name is the shield that keeps your daughter safe. Her gaze found Elena's in the mirror. Acknowledge it or not, for the coming 3 years, you are his. Act. The words should have ignited a spark of defiance. Instead, they only served as the final bars on her gilded cage. Once the makeup was done, Mrs. Kovash coiled Elena's hair into an intricate knot of deceptive simplicity. "Finished," she declared at last. "Now picture this." Elena stares into the glass and meets the eyes of a stranger, a polished doll crafted for a high society stage. The makeup is a severe art, carving her cheekbones into blades and making her eyes vast pools of darkness. "This person isn't me," she whispered, her voice strained. But Mrs. Kovach's reply was sharp. "It is Mrs. Volkov," delivering the final, definitive blow. The gown, a sheath of dark fabric, clung to curves Elena habitually concealed, making her fair skin seem to radiate light. She felt unsteady on the heels, a creature adorned in understated wealth, diamond studs and a delicate bracelet. The platinum ring, a recent addition, felt like a manacle, its large diamond a cold emblem of her new reality. "Perfect," Mrs. Kovash pronounced. "He will be pleased." "His pleasure is not my concern. He will be pleased regardless." A firm knock on the door sliced through the charged air. It was Damien. "Is she prepared? The car is here." Taking a steadying breath, Elena smoothed the dress and pulled the door open. He stood there, immense and formidable in a tuxedo. His eyes swept over her, a swift, cool appraisal. "You are adequate," he stated. The air vanished from her lungs. Merely adequate. That was a compliment. "You are unskilled at giving them." "I am aware." He offered his arm with a mechanical formality. The instant her skin met his, an electric current jolted through her. Descending the staircase, their reflection presented flawless lie. A breathtaking pair en route to a gala, a delusion she almost fell for. The hotel lobby was a blinding explosion of crystal chandeliers. Massive marble pillars supported the ceiling of the cavernous ballroom. Elena's eyes swept across the chamber, a churning sea of couture and the low hum of inherited wealth. Her hand tightened on Damien's arm, a reflex born of rising panic. "Breathe," he murmured into her ear. "You are managing. We have only just arrived. And you remain on your feet. That is a victory." A small smile touched her lips against her will. She could feel the weight of 100 gazes as they moved, each one assessing her, measuring her. Damien navigated the throng as if he commanded the very space, offering terse nods to acquaintances. Then a woman named Victoria materialized, obstructing their path. "I cannot believe you actually came." "Victoria, you look well." "You were always a dreadful liar." Her gaze slid to Elena. "And who might this be?" "My wife, Elena." The shock on Victoria's face was a visible impact. "Wife? When did this occur?" "Recently." "How recently?" "Recently enough." The chill in Damien's voice was a solid wall of ice. "Now, if you will forgive us." "I will not." "You won't escape so easily." Victoria physically detached Elena from Damien's arm. "I require the full account, from your first meeting to this ring." Elena cast a desperate glance toward Damien, who offered a minute nod, a silent, "You can handle this." "We met through some mutual acquaintances," Elena began, delivering the pre-rehearsed lines. "It was all quite ordinary." "Ordinary? Nothing that involves Damien Volkov is ever ordinary." Victoria steered her toward the bar. "Now explain how you snared the most sought-after bachelor in this city." "I didn't snare him. We simply—" "Oh, spare me the feigned modesty. Do you have any idea how many women have attempted to trap him, and you're the one who succeeded?" Victoria procured 2 glasses of champagne, pressing one into Elena's hand. "I am impressed and deeply intrigued." Elena sipped, using the effervescence as a defense. "There isn't much of a story." There is always a story. What is your profession? From where do you hail? Any significant family? The questions were a rapid-fire assault that left Elena's head spinning. She offered him vague, hollow replies, her main goal to obscure how profoundly she did not belong. Then, appearing like a phantom, Damien was at her side. Victoria, cease your interrogation of my wife. This is not an interrogation. It's girl talk. A distinction exists. The distinction is merely a word. He gently removed the champagne flute from Elena's fingers. We must greet some people. You have become so tedious, Victoria lamented. Very well. Attend to your affairs. Elena and I shall converse later. As they moved away, Elena released a trembling breath. That was dreadful. You managed it flawlessly. She posed 30 questions in 5 minutes. That is simply her method of introduction. Damien guided her to a cluster of older men. This next part will be worse. Simply smile and remain silent. He was not mistaken. The ensuing conversation was a disorienting haze of names and financial terms that felt like slowly drowning. Elena simply remained at Damien's side, a counterfeit smile fixed in place, resisting the powerful impulse to flee. Then, someone uttered the name Marcus. A true shame about that situation with Chen, one of the men remarked. I heard he absconded with a great deal of money. A chill of pure ice coursed through Elena's veins. A firm hand settled on the small of her back, a grounding weight. That matter is concluded, Damien said, his voice devoid of all emotion. It is not worthy of discussion. Still, it must be uncomfortable for your wife, considering her past connection. I said the subject is closed. Damien's tone did not rise, but it carried a razor's edge that caused the other man to visibly pale. Is that understood? Yes, absolutely. My apologies. The entire group seemed to dissolve into the crowd. Damien kept his hand on her, guiding her toward a more secluded area. Are you all right? He inquired. They know. Her voice was just above a whisper. They all know about Marcus. A select few are aware of the facts. The majority possess only rumors. He was one of them. Richard knows because he thrives on gossip and lacks any discretion. Damien turned her to face him. Look at me. Her gaze reluctantly lifted to his. This is not your burden, he said with finality. Marcus orchestrated his own ruin. You are merely caught in the aftermath. The opinions of these people are meaningless. That is simple for you to claim. You are not the one they are all whispering about. Incorrect. Marrying a complete unknown after all this time has made me their primary topic of interest. The shadow of a smile touched his lips. The sole difference is their thoughts could not matter less to me. I don't know how to do that. You do. You are simply choosing not to. His gaze shifted beyond her. Come, allow me to introduce you to someone who is not a complete viper. The couple he chose was older, their relaxed demeanor a perfect antidote to her anxiety. They inquired about Rosie with genuine warmth, avoiding any mention of the surrounding drama. By the time dinner was served, the worst of her panic had subsided. The meal was an elaborate, multi-course event she barely registered, as Damien provided a quiet analysis of the subtle power dynamics playing out across the room. The faint warmth radiating from his hand, poised near her chair, was a steady pulse against her skin. It wasn't an intrusion, but a solid point of gravity. After the meal, the music rose, pulling couples toward the floor. A fresh tide of dread washed over her as Damien extended his hand. I don't know this kind of dance, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. It's simple. Just follow me. a classic prelude to disaster. Then you'll have to put your faith in me. She had none to give, but took his hand to escape the gallery of watching eyes. He guided her among the other dancers. One of his hands settled on her waist, the other enclosed hers. Her mind raced, sifting through scenes from old films for a clue. "Stop thinking so much," Damien murmured. "Just feel my lead. I'm absolutely going to crush your feet. I'll recover." The entire experience was far less catastrophic than she'd anticipated. His guidance was absolute, asking nothing of her mind, only that her body move with his to remain standing. As they glided across the polished floor, the tightness in her chest began to ease. "You see," Damien noted, "you haven't fallen yet." "What a glowing endorsement." "I mean it literally. You're navigating this evening better than I foresaw." "You could really use some practice with compliments." A faint twitch touched his lips. "I'm attempting to." They moved in silence for a moment, and she grew aware of their proximity, of the scent she had come to associate with safety. "May I ask you something?" she ventured. "You may." "What was the real reason you needed a wife? The explanation you offered felt incomplete." Damien's features instantly shuddered. "What you know is sufficient." "We are legally bound. I believe I have a right to more than the summary." An extended silence hung between them. "My interests are in ventures where tradition is paramount," he conceded at last. "A man who remains a bachelor for too long is perceived as a liability. A husband is afforded privileges, a single man is not. So this is all a performance, for appearances. In my life, appearance is currency. Reality is secondary." That sounds utterly draining. It is, but it is also a formidable weapon. His gaze held hers as the song concluded. The moment he stepped away, a chill rushed into the space that had been between them, and Elena felt the absence of his warmth. "I have to confer with a colleague," he stated. "Can you manage on your own?" "I will be fine." With a curt nod, he vanished into the throng of guests. Standing alone near the dance floor, Elena was struck by a piercing sense of abandonment. "Mrs. Volkov?" She spun around. A young man in an immaculate suit was offering a smile. "James Kensington, my father conducts business with your husband." He offered a hand. I felt compelled to introduce myself. Elena accepted it, thankful for the interruption. "It's a pleasure. You are, I must admit, the centerpiece of tonight's gossip." No one anticipated Damien's marriage. "Yes, I've gathered as much. Let me just say, it is a positive development. He is so severe. Perhaps you are what he requires to appear human." James motioned toward the bar. "May I offer you a drink? You seem as though you might need one." Following a brief hesitation, Elena gave a slight nod. "Yes, thank you." James bridged the silence with effortless talk on their way to the bar. It was a welcome taste of normalcy. The other woman's approach was so silent they were unaware until she was upon them. "Well, well." The voice was like splintered ice. "So this is the bride who has everyone whispering." Elena turned to see a stunning blonde attired in clothes that bespoke generations of wealth. A look of pure disdain washed across the woman's face. "I'm sorry," Elena began. "Have we met?" "Not formally. I am Natasha Fedorova." She pronounced the name as if it were a title. When Elena showed no recognition, Natasha's smile sharpened. "Damien's former girlfriend." A cold weight settled in Elena's stomach. "Oh." "Precisely," Natasha purred, gliding closer. "You're not what I envisioned. One expects an upgrade, not whatever this is." James shifted, a portrait of discomfort. Natasha, perhaps what, James? I should feign politeness? Endorse this transparent arrangement? Natasha's stare was unadulterated venom. She ensnared him, a nobody with a child who orchestrated the entire affair. It is truly pathetic. A hot flush climbed Elena's neck. I did not ensnare anyone. Oh, spare me. As if Damien would genuinely consider someone of your standing otherwise. You are a pet project, his most recent act of charity. Natasha's voice fell to a venomous whisper. And when he tires of you, and he will, he'll discard you back in the gutter from which he pulled you. Elena's hands began to tremble, any retort she might have had dissolving from the sheer shock. In that instant, Damien's voice cut through the air. Natasha, that is enough. The blonde whirled to face him. Damien, I was simply getting acquainted. You were verbally assaulting her. I heard you. He stepped between them, an immovable barrier. Go, now. You cannot be serious about her. This whole situation is a farce. Do not force me to repeat myself. The iron in his tone made Natasha recoil. With a final glare of pure loathing at Elena, she departed. Damien turned to his wife. Are you all right? Fine. The word was a complete fabrication, her only defense. No, you're not, he countered, taking her arm with a gentle firmness. We're going. But we can't simply leave. The speculation? Their chatter is meaningless. You have endured enough tonight. He escorted her toward the exit with a resolute, unwavering pace. Elena registered the astonished expressions and caught fragments of hushed conversation, but Damien behaved as if they were the only two present. Inside the car, the tremors she had suppressed finally took hold of her. Clasping her hands failed to still them. I'm sorry, she breathed. For what? For my reaction? For allowing her to affect me. She is a resentful woman, incensed that I have moved on. You are not at fault. Damien loosened his tie. I should have anticipated her presence. You too were involved. For 6 months, roughly 2 years ago, the ending was not amicable. She seems rather fixated on you. Natasha is fixated on the concept of me, not the man himself. He gazed at the passing city lights. She desired the name, the wealth, the influence. When she failed to control me, she resorted to games. I terminated it. A classic opportunist, she mused, knowing the accusation was a mirror of the other woman's own playbook. Elena faced him, probing deeper. Was her pregnancy just another tactic? Among many, he affirmed, a nerve flickering in his jaw. That part of my life is over. A profound quiet consumed the remainder of the journey. As the city lights blurred past, Elena dissected the evening, the suffocating gala, their dance, and Natasha's venomous, deliberate attack. I appreciate, she broke the silence, what you did for me. You carry my name, he replied flatly. It may be an arrangement, but I will not have it dishonored in public. Yet his defense of her resonated as something far beyond protecting a brand. She had seen a fleeting vulnerability, a hairline fracture in his impenetrable facade. Inside the house, Elena kicked off the agonizing heels. Damien draped his jacket on the newel post. You navigated the evening with skill, he remarked. In fact, with exceptional skill. It felt less like skill and more like narrowly averting a catastrophe. You stepped into a den of vipers and betrayed no fear. Most newcomers cannot manage that. Elena studied him, the architect of her new existence, an enigma who controlled her entire future. His intervention hinted at an investment that went beyond the pages of their contract. May I ask something else? She ventured. This is becoming a habit for you, he noted dryly. What was the true reason for your split with Natasha? Damien paused, the silence stretching into an eternity. Because she viewed me as a rung on her ladder, he answered at last. Every word, every gesture was a calculated part of her ascent. I grew tired of deciphering her real agenda. And you're sure I am not the same? She asked, her voice soft. I know you are not. You agreed to a contract with a 3-year conclusion. You are not maneuvering for a permanent position. Your objective is simply to endure. He began to ascend the staircase. It is a refreshingly honest motive. Elena watched his retreat, a strange and bewildering knot tightening inside her that she dared not examine. Upstairs, she found Rosie sound asleep amidst a fortress of plush animals before slipping into her own room, peeling away the expensive gown, the weighty jewels, and the mask of cosmetics. The reflection that stared back was her own, weary and uncertain, but undeniably authentic. Her phone then illuminated with a text from Sarah. The message glowed on the screen. So how did it go? Elena, perched on the bed's edge, felt the impossibility of summarizing the night. The event had been a minefield. Natasha had declared herself an enemy, and she'd had to perform as Damien's adoring wife. It was complicated, she typed back. Can we talk tomorrow? She set the phone aside and fell back, her gaze fixed on the ceiling. Tomorrow, Rosie's tutor would arrive. The following week brought another high society function, another performance review of her role as Mrs. Volkoff. Yet for a brief spell tonight, the performance had felt disturbingly real. The thought that this charade could become her new normal was a more terrifying prospect than any socialite's venom. The tutor, Claire Stevens, arrived on Tuesday morning with a well-loved leather satchel and a gentle demeanor. She was in her mid-40s, possessing the quiet aura of a seasoned caregiver. As Elena opened the door, Rosie immediately hid behind her legs. Mrs. Volkoff, it is a pleasure, Claire said, extending a hand. And you must be Rosie? The small girl peeked out, her expression a perfect blend of timidness and intrigue. A barely audible hello escaped her lips. Claire crouched, meeting Rosie at her eye level and presenting a pair of books as a kind of offering. She gently asked if Rosie might like to see them. The girl's eyes flicked to her mother for unspoken approval. Elena offered a slight nod. A spark of curiosity was ignited. Within minutes, Claire had Rosie completely mesmerized by the illustrations on the library floor. Elena observed from the doorway, a sentry unable to abandon her post, every fiber of her being on alert. She is quite good, a deep voice remarked just behind her. Elena startled. Damien's presence was a stark deviation from his established pattern. I wanted to see for myself, he clarified. He leaned against the doorframe, his own expression unreadable as he watched the scene unfold. Does she meet your standards? She withheld her verdict for now. But an hour later, even Elena's guard had lowered. Claire was flawless, patient without being patronizing, engaging without being overwhelming. Rosie was already pleading for her to return on Wednesday and Friday. A tentative schedule was quickly established. Elena consented, her voice softer as she conceded the woman had a true gift with Rosie. Your daughter is exceptionally bright. This will be a joy. Claire offered Rosie a final warm smile. Goodbyes were exchanged until Wednesday. Rosie waved with frantic energy, her small hand a blur. After Claire departed, an elated Rosie raced to Damien, clutching the book she had been allowed to keep. He feigned immense interest, prompting her for every detail of the plot. Elena watched the two of them, the titan of industry and her little girl, and felt an unnerving constriction in her chest. "Mom, did you see the rabbit pictures?" Rosie chirped. Elena assured her she had. "They're so cute. Claire says next time is numbers. Maybe we can practice." Rosie leaned against Damien's leg, utterly comfortable. "Do you know numbers?" He played the novice, insisting he was very keen to learn. "I can teach you." "I would like that more than anything." Elena quietly excused herself, finding Mrs. Kovach already in the kitchen. The housekeeper moved with practiced efficiency, preparing their lunch. "The tutoring session was a success?" Mrs. Kovach inquired, her focus remaining on her chopping. "Yes, she's remarkably skilled." Elena hoisted herself onto a stool at the counter. "Rosie is quite taken with her." "And what is your assessment?" the housekeeper pressed. "My assessment is that Rosie's happiness is a positive development." Mrs. Kovach's gaze sharpened slightly. "That is not what I asked." "I know," Elena conceded, her finger tracing patterns on the marble. "It's difficult to accept help, particularly from him." "And what is the reason for that?" the older woman queried. "Because nothing is ever free. There is always a hidden price." "Mr. Volkov is not sending an invoice." "This isn't about currency. It's the obligation, the unspoken debt, the sense of—" Elena trailed off, unable to articulate the true depth of her fear. "I am worried for Rosie, becoming attached to someone who will vanish in 3 years." Mrs. Kovach set down her knife. "May I be frank?" "Of course." "You are investing so much energy in bracing for a future pain that you are failing to see the present good." She gestured toward the library from where the sound of a child's laughter now drifted. "Your daughter is happy. She is protected. She is being given chances you could not provide. Perhaps, rather than bracing for the worst, you might allow for the possibility that a kindness is simply that." The words landed with an unexpected weight. "You believe I am over-analyzing this?" "I believe you are prudent, but there is a difference between prudence and being entirely walled off." Mrs. Kovach resumed her task. "Mr. Volkov is a very complicated man, but in the 8 years I have worked here, I have never known him to bring harm to an innocent. When he says he will protect you and the child, he is speaking the truth." "For 3 years," Elena countered. "That is a greater guarantee than most people are ever given." Elena offered no response. She simply listened to the sound of Rosie counting in the other room, and for the first time wondered if Mrs. Kovach was right. The weeks that passed settled into a quiet cadence. Claire visited 3 times a week, and Rosie blossomed under the focused attention. Damien maintained his schedule of early departures and late returns, yet he never once missed their nightly dinner. Elena found herself acclimating to this strange new reality, even as she consciously maintained a high emotional barricade. Then, one Friday evening, the fragile illusion of their tranquil existence was utterly shattered. With Rosie tucked into bed, Elena was in the library when she heard a confrontation erupt from Damien's study. She attempted to dismiss it. His affairs were not her own. But the shouting escalated, punctuated by the sharp, definitive crack of shattering glass. Elena was moving before a conscious thought could form. She reached the study just as the door was flung open and a man barreled out, his face a contorted mask of rage. This is far from over, Volkov, he snarled back into the room. Damien materialized in the doorway, his shirt disheveled, his jaw set like stone. Yes, it is. And if you ever appear at my home uninvited again, you will live to regret it. The man departed, slamming the front door with a force that seemed to vibrate through the entire house. Elena stood frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. Damien's gaze found hers, and his entire expression shifted. How much of that did you witness? Enough. Who was he? He is nobody. He sounded like a very significant nobody, judging by the volume. Damien scrubbed a hand over his face, suddenly looking depleted of all energy. A former associate who made a series of catastrophic decisions and assumed I would be his salvation. I declined. That felt like more than a simple business disagreement. It was not. He moved to close the study door but paused. I regret that you had to witness that. It will not be repeated. Damien, hold on. Elena crossed the distance between them. Are you all right? Your hand is bleeding. He glanced down at his knuckles, where a new gash was already beating with blood. It is fine. It is not fine. Come with me. She took his arm before he could object, guiding him toward the kitchen. To her astonishment, he complied without resistance. Elena made him sit at the island while she retrieved the first aid kit Mrs. Kovat stored beneath the sink. I am perfectly capable of handling this, Damien stated. I have no doubt, but I am doing it. She located the kit and returned, taking his hand with a gentle but resolute grip. The wound was not severe, but it was embedded with tiny shards of glass. What did you punch? A whiskey glass. It was a momentary failure of control. Clearly! She began to carefully clean the injury, extracting the slivers of glass with a pair of tweezers. Damien simply watched her, his expression a silent, indecipherable mask. This will sting. She applied a dab of antiseptic. He did not so much as flinch. You have a steady hand, he noted. Rosie is 4 years old. You learn the quiet art of mending scrapes and easing out splinters. She secured the gauze around his hand. There. Try to keep from shattering any more glass. I will try my best. A tense silence descended between them. Elena could feel the battle still humming inside him, in the rigid set of his shoulders, the weariness around his eyes. That confrontation had left its poison. Do you want to talk about it? She offered. No. Fine. She began to pack the medical kit away. He called me a thief, Damien said suddenly, accused me of faking the numbers to steal his cut. All of it a lie. Now he's threatening lawyers, making it formal. Can he? He can make the claim. It will go nowhere. The agreements are solid. My accounting is perfect. A nerve pulsed in Damien's jaw. But it's the betrayal. I gave him a chance when the world had shut him out. I trusted him. This is how he pays me back. That is the Marcus I remember, Elena said softly. His eyes locked with hers. How? Blaming everyone else for the fires he starts, she answered, casting himself as the victim when he was holding the match. Her gaze was unflinching. Some people can never carry the weight of their own faults. He studied her for a long, still moment, a new awareness flickering in his gaze. You understand. More than you could ever know. She let the words linger before saying, I'm sorry that this happened, that someone you trusted would throw that trust away. It's a risk in this life. It happens. That doesn't make the wound any less deep. For a second, his icy armor fractured, revealing a glimmer of pure vulnerability she almost missed. But it was there, real. Thank you, he said, for my hand, and for listening. Of course. He rose, flexing the bandaged hand. I have work to attend to. Good night, Elena. Good night. She watched him go, alone in the quiet kitchen, trying to understand the man she had just glimpsed behind the mask. For a moment, he was not her keeper. He was just a man she might one day begin to understand. The next morning began with Rosie bouncing on the bed. Mama, wake up. I am up. What is it? Nothing is wrong. Damien said we are going to the city, all of us. He said there's a place with dinosaurs, if it's okay with you. Please say yes. Elena sat up, her thoughts still clouded with sleep. He said that? Yes. He's downstairs eating and told me to come ask you. Please, can we? Elena rubbed her temples. Let me speak with him. Go and brush your teeth. Rosie vanished, her mind already filled with titans. Elena slipped from the bed and padded downstairs in her sleepwear. Damien was in the dining room with his coffee and a paper. He looked up as she entered. Dinosaurs was all she said. The Natural History Museum has an impressive collection. I thought Rosie might enjoy it, since when are you taking a Saturday for yourself? Since I realized 3 months have passed without a single day of rest. He folded the paper. You are hesitating. No, it isn't that. I want to go. It is just unexpected. Is this a good sign or a bad one? Elena considered it. It was good. Rosie is nearly vibrating with excitement. Very well, we will depart in 1 hour. The museum was a sea of families, a rush of children past ancient, silent things. In the great hall of dinosaurs, Rosie's eyes widened at the colossal Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton. It's so big, she whispered. That is a Tyrannosaurus Rex, Damien murmured beside her. One of the most lethal predators of its time. What is a predator? It was a meat eater. Rosie's focus narrowed. Like chicken nuggets? Elena could not suppress a laugh. Exactly like that, only much, much bigger. For 2 hours they wandered, Damien explaining the world of the past to Rosie while Elena watched, a new kind of wonder growing inside her. She had never imagined this part of him, this quiet patience for a child's unending questions. How do you know all of this? She finally asked, as Rosie ran to see a triceratops. I read a great deal as a child. Paleontology was a particular interest. You were a dinosaur kid? Does that truly surprise you? A little. I just cannot imagine a miniature Damien obsessed with fossils. The barest hint of a smile touched his lips. I was not a typical child. I was quiet, serious. I preferred books to people. Then what changed? Life. The world as it is. I learned that books cannot teach you how to survive. He watched Rosie trace the curve of a massive horn. But it is still fascinating. They moved on, pausing in the gift shop where Rosie discovered a plush triceratops, clutching it as if it were treasure. May I have it? She asked Elena, whose spirit fell at the price. $25 was far too much for a toy. Perhaps something smaller. Get it, Damien instructed, his wallet already out. That is not your decision. I know, but I would like to. He passed his card to the cashier before Elena could form another protest. Rosie treasured her new acquisition. A quiet word of thanks to Damien earned a brief nod. The afternoon sun was deceptively warm as they left the building. At a nearby park, Rosie made a beeline for the playground. This is pleasant, Elena observed from a bench, never letting Rosie out of her sight. Thank you for this. There's surprise in your tone. I suppose I'm a little taken aback. This almost seems ordinary. Just 3 individuals enjoying a Saturday. It is ordinary. We're a business arrangement with a 4-year-old girl on a staged family trip. This is fundamentally false. Damien settled beside her. Does it matter if it's counterfeit, if the feeling is true? That was far too philosophical for the day. I am large. Elena's laugh was a surprise even to her. Did you really just quote poetry to me? I told you I was a voracious reader as a child. A calm quiet settled between them as they observed Rosie conquering the slide. Each descent, a new adventure. Can I ask you something? Elena's voice broke the stillness. You ask me countless things, and you're hardly a beacon of transparency, a fair assessment. So, what is this? Why bring me to a museum? Damien hesitated for a moment. Yesterday, you saw me unravel, enraged, uncontrolled, striking a wall like some reckless youth. I needed to show you that isn't the whole of me. His candor left her speechless. I didn't think you were unhinged. Are you certain? No, it showed me you were human. She shifted to look at him. You are always so guarded, so controlled. To witness a genuine emotion was, honestly, it was a relief. Most prefer the automated version. Most do not share a home with you. Their gazes met, and an unspoken current passed between them. A shock Elena felt to her core. Then Rosie ran up, shattering the moment. Mama, the ice cream man, can we? Elena looked to Damien. He offered a simple shrug. Why not? They bought ice cream, chocolate for Rosie, vanilla for Elena. Damien declined until Rosie insisted he sample hers, and he took a small taste just to appease her. They sat on the grass as Rosie recited a torrent of dinosaur facts acquired that day. In the car, she fought against sleep, her new Triceratops toy held in a death grip. Waking her for supper will be a battle, Elena whispered, gazing at her daughter's tranquil expression. Then she can sleep. It's of no consequence. Was that compassion? I've made a note. I wouldn't grow accustomed to it, he cautioned. But a novel warmth had crept into his voice. At the house, Damien silently carried the sleeping child upstairs. Elena trailed behind, watching him carefully place Rosie in bed, the plastic dinosaur still clutched in her hand. You know, she's growing fond of you, Elena remarked from the doorway. The unspoken question lingered. Would that complicate their agreement? I can't say. Ask me in 3 years when we must justify your departure. He was deferring the issue, prioritizing the child's present contentment over their future dilemma. He started toward his own bedroom before pausing abruptly. I must concede, he murmured. Today wasn't entirely unpleasant. She silently concurred. After he was gone, Elena retreated to her room, feeling as if her entire world had been inverted. Their arrangement was meant to be purely transactional, a 3-year charade for her survival. Emotions were never meant to enter the equation. But seeing Damien with Rosie, witnessing that hint of gentleness, had shattered her defenses. The fortifications she had built around her heart were beginning to crumble, and she had no idea how to repair them. The following week demanded a new performance, a formal corporate dinner. In an emerald gown, she braced for scrutiny, but the evening passed with unexpected ease. His associates were welcoming, drawing her into their circle as if she truly belonged. The entire night, Damien's hand rested on the small of her back, a possessive gesture that felt increasingly natural. On the drive home, his mood was light. He declared the evening a resounding success. She agreed, remarking that his friends were kind. They are partners, he clarified, not mere colleagues. There is a distinction. That distinction, he explained, was about absolute allegiance. Partners would stand with you in a war. Colleagues were just co-workers. The words sank in, and she understood that such loyalty was forged in shared hardship. he recounted a story of the Andersons, a family he had saved from destitution 15 years prior. Their unwavering devotion, he stated, was the true return on that investment. This resonated with something Mrs. Kovach had once mentioned, and she posed a question to test her own standing. "And what of me? Do you trust me?" After a long, weighted silence, he offered a sliver of ground. "I am beginning to." He dismissed their contract, implying her presence was a choice, not a compulsion, noting she'd had many opportunities to flee which she had not taken. His gaze remained fixed on the road. "You aren't here because you're a prisoner. You're here because you have no desire to go." The stark truth of his words struck her with physical force. "I am afraid," she countered weakly. He retorted that she was merely becoming acclimated to her gilded cage. She had no reply. Later, after Rosie was asleep, she deviated from her nightly ritual and went to his study, an act of complete surrender. He was there. He asked why she was awake, his focus still on a monitor. As she lingered in the doorway, he beckoned her inside, reminding her that the house was hers as well. She confessed he had been right, that she could have resisted him more before taking refuge in the ultimate justification. It was all for her daughter. When he pressed her about her fears, she finally voiced her deepest anxiety. The boundary between their performance and reality was beginning to dissolve completely. It was the terror of growing accustomed to him. At that, Damien ceased his work. He faced her, his voice lowering. And would that be so dreadful? He rose and crossed the space between them, a silent assertion of dominance. Then he proposed his revised terms. He acknowledged their contract's expiration date, but offered a new path for the next 3 years. They could simply cease the pretense. He suggested they become the couple they were feigning to be. She recognized the trap instantly. "And Rosie?" she countered, her mind racing to the fallout of a genuine separation. It was then he revealed his final move. The divorce would end their legal union, but not his place in Rosie's life. He would remain, he vowed, a constant presence, rendering any clean escape for Elena utterly impossible. A shadow of disbelief crossed her features. His reasoning was lethally simple. He had developed an affection for the child. That admission was the key that broke her last defenses. The words that tumbled from her were a catalog of his paradoxes. The brute and the protector, the cold-hearted boss and the guardian, the precise state of chaos his psychological games were designed to induce. Her confession that she couldn't comprehend him was the very objective of his campaign. His entire posture of uncertainty was just weaponized confusion engineered to dismantle her. Then came the final blow. He spoke of seeing her smile, a truly genuine smile. He was rewriting the terms of her captivity, claiming his only wish was her happiness within it, the perfect mask for a benevolent despot. When she demanded a reason for his concern, he played his final card. Over the last month, he admitted, she had evolved from a business liability into something else. Those words, meticulously crafted for sincerity, sent a tremor through her. She identified it for what it was, a violation of their agreement. He made no attempt at denial, and as she labeled it a mistake, neither of them retreated. The space between them hummed with unspoken tension. His fingers grazed a strand of her hair, a calculated gesture that crossed a critical boundary. His subsequent command for her to leave, framed as an attempt to prevent a regrettable act, was a masterful display of power, leaving her suspended in a state of raw, unfiltered want. The cold calculus of their contract was now at war with the storm he had unleashed inside her. He had achieved a total, undeniable victory. His declaration of emotional investment resonated in her mind. The wall she had painstakingly maintained between them was disintegrating, and she didn't know whether to rebuild it or let it fall. She located him in the kitchen. For a fleeting instant, she saw something authentic in his expression before his mask of composure fell back into place. She attempted to address the previous night's events. He initially deflected, gauging her resolve, but relented when she held her ground. It was in that moment she gave him precisely what he sought. She conceded that she no longer despised their arrangement. With that single admission, she stepped completely into the reality he had so carefully constructed around her. She had finally spoken her greatest fear into existence. Rosie was beginning to adore him, and their departure in less than 3 years would be an unbearable cruelty to the child. There was no longer a clean escape. After a perfectly measured silence, Damien laid out his final move. What if they never had to leave? The question shattered her last defense. He suggested that when the 3 years concluded, they simply see where they stood, rather than closing the chapter. He called their legal pact a piece of paper, not a life sentence, artfully blurring a firm deadline into an uncertain emotional horizon. By proposing they abandon plans for an end that neither might truly desire, he effectively stole her very ability to hope for freedom. She understood at once. He intended to make this performance their reality. My proposition is that we allow this to become what it is meant to be, he offered, cloaking his absolute control in the soft language of destiny. Her hands began to tremble, the sole signal of the war that raged within her. Asking for time was her last desperate bid for survival. He granted it like a benevolent king, utterly certain of her answer. As he departed, he delivered the final, devastating blow. She was the only one in years who had made him want something more than another transaction. Then he was gone. In the weeks that followed, a strange, warped version of normal took hold. Damien's new routines and constant presence set the rhythm of her days, a prize for her surrender. Every small kindness he offered was amplified in her thoughts as her world shrank to orbit only him, the ultimate proof of his quiet conquest. The old, pale scars across his left hand remained a riddle she could not decipher. Deconstructing him piece by piece had become her terrifying private obsession. And then her past took physical form at the front gate as Marcus Chen. Elena was in the garden with Rosie when Mrs. Kovac approached, her expression deeply troubled. "There is a man at the gate," she said. "He is asking for you." He gave his name as Marcus Chen. The name landed like a stone in her chest. "What?" "Security is with him, but he refuses to go. He claims he must speak with you about something urgent." Rosie looked up from her flowers. "Who is Marcus?" "No one important, my love." Elena's thoughts were racing. "Mrs. Kovac, would you please take Rosie inside?" "Of course." The housekeeper offered her hand. "Calm, little one. We will go make some cookies." Rosie went along easily, already talking about chocolate. The second they were inside, Elena found her phone with unsteady hands and dialed Damien. He answered on the first ring. "What is it?" "Marcus, he is here, at the front gate. He's asking to see me." A long, weighted silence stretched over the line. 20 minutes, he said at last. "Do not go near him. I was not going to. Elena, I require you to listen to me. Do not exit the house. I will handle this man. He is my problem to handle. The moment we were married, he was no longer solely your problem. Let me take care of this. And the line went dead. Elena remained frozen in the garden, her arms wrapped around herself, trying to comprehend the specter of Marcus at her gate. The sheer audacity after the betrayal, the theft, the abandonment. She returned to the house, a restless spirit pacing the floors. She checked her phone every 30 seconds. Each noise from outside was a jolt. At last, the sound of tires on the drive announced Damien's return. He came inside, flanked by 2 guards, his face a mask of cold stone. Where is he? Still at the gate. Security has him contained. Good. Damien removed his jacket, dropping it onto a chair. Stay here. I want to come with you. No. Damien. Please, I must see him. I need to. Her voice broke. I need to know that I can look at his face and not shatter into pieces. He searched her face, and a fraction of the ice in his gaze thawed. Fine, but you will remain at my side. If I instruct you to return to the house, you will do so. Understood? Understood. They walked toward the gate, Damien's guards trailing behind them. Through the dark iron bars, Elena saw Marcus beside a nondescript rental car, looking smaller than she recalled. He was thin, his expensive suits replaced by jeans and a rumpled shirt. When his eyes found her, his entire expression flooded with relief. Elena, thank God, I have been calling you for weeks. She gazed at the man she had nearly married and felt only a placid, cold fury. What do you want? Her voice was stronger than she'd anticipated. I need to explain everything that happened, why I had to leave. Marcus moved nearer to the gate. It was not as it seemed. I was trapped. I panicked, and I should have never, ever left you. You stole $12 million. Damien's voice cut through, flat and lethal. And you left her to bear the consequences. Marcus's gaze flew to him, and in that instant she saw true terror. Your information is flawed. I took nothing. Damien's tone was glacial. It was a failed venture. Do not lie to her. I possess the records that trace every false account, every client you defrauded. You are a common thief, walking free only by my permission. Because you coveted her. Marcus's composure finally fractured, his desperation seeping through. You made your move the moment I was out of the picture, marrying her before our wedding arrangements had even wilted. That is no mere chance. You are correct, Damien conceded. It is not. It is an opportunity. You discarded an asset and a woman who merited better. I presented an alternative. An alternative? Marcus's laugh was sharp with bitterness. You trapped her. Likely dangled the debt over her until she was left without a choice. Is that your version of events? Elena moved forward, her hands clenched into fists. That I am so weak I could be coerced into this arrangement. I understand how you operate, Elena. Marcus's words were a deliberate strike, designed to resurrect the specter of her former self and break her newfound resolve. And for a fleeting second, his psychological assault finds its mark. She is back at that altar, suffocating beneath his condemnation. Yet Damien's presence is an anchor, a quiet refutation of Marcus's entire story. When she speaks, her voice is not that of the woman he once controlled. She announces the complete dissolution of her past self, a persona constructed from his deceptions. Her current choice is a stark, calculated transaction, exchanging one life for another. She paints her new existence as a significant improvement where her daughter's security is purchased by shedding the liability of his failures. His supposed love was a counterfeit. Damien's raw honesty, by comparison, has become her new bedrock. The fury that colors Marcus's face is the impotent rage of a puppeteer whose strings have just been severed. He attempts one last desperate gambit, framing Damien as a predator with hidden intentions, but Elena inverts his narrative, taking full ownership. Damien's terms were always transparent, a clear agreement, not a serpentine trap like Marcus's web of deceit. Damien's hand on her is a silent confirmation of their united front. Then Elena wields the very power her new position grants her, threatening to expose Marcus for the fugitive he is. His hollow retort, "You wouldn't," is crushed by her unyielding will. In that instant, any hope he held simply dissolves. The weapons he carried, disruption and emotional manipulation, are utterly ineffective against the fortress she has become. His final volley, a bitter condemnation of their sham marriage, is a laughable self-indictment from a man whose entire relationship with her was the greater deception. As his car disappears, a profound tension within Elena finally breaks, leaving only a stark and absolute sense of relief. In the quiet that came after, Elena's deep sigh revealed the toll of that battle. She confessed how close she came to breaking, to almost accepting his distorted narrative of her. Damien's response recast the entire event. He told her what mattered wasn't her proximity to believing the lie, but her ultimate, powerful rejection of it. He defined her strength not as an inherent trait, but as a newfound power she was only now learning to command. His validation was an affirmation of the terms he'd set from the start. Gazing at this complex, dangerous man, she saw her protector thanking him for the silent defense he had mounted. His reply, a single word, always, was not a promise. It was a sworn, unbreakable oath. Back within the sanctuary of the house, Elena understood that freedom was not about wealth or possessions. It was the profound, internal certainty that one could stand inside a tempest and remain unshaken. In the silence of the library, their emotional ledger was reopened for audit, the terms of their contract up for renegotiation. When Elena suggested they alter the arrangement, she was proposing to burn the original blueprint of their lives. She confessed her fear, a constant companion she was now simply too weary to entertain. The wedding ring, once a cold symbol of their pact, now carried a weight she could feel in her soul. And then, the catalyst. Their daughter, Rosie, whose innocent question about a real daddy had fractured the entire illusion. Elena's reply to her child that Damien was family now was a revelation that struck her own heart like lightning. The man of the contract dissolved that moment, replaced by the undeniable truth of a bond that had grown in the shadows. Damien's response was immediate and absolute as he sank to one knee, ready to meet her emotional gambit with an earth-shattering one of his own. The contract's 3-year deadline was no longer an escape clause, but a crucible that might just forge something real. And so Elena rewrote the narrative, offering a dangerous proposition: to build an actual life together, not just survive a contract. It was an immense risk, a quiet admission that feelings for Damien Volkov were taking root, and this time, she wouldn't run. He tried to douse the flame with cold reality, insisting he was no savior, just a possessive monster whose enemies would paint a target on her back. He offered her a future defined by chaos and peril. Elena's retort was devastating. She told him simple was the very thing that had shattered her world with Marcus. She didn't want easy. She craved the beautiful, chaotic truth. He confessed his own emotional illiteracy, and she simply replied, "Then we'll learn together, as partners." His embrace wasn't meant to soothe. It was an act of demolition, engineered to tear down her final defenses. She held on just as tightly, releasing months of pent-up fear and a fragile sliver of hope. and then he delivered the most devastating blow, vowing that one day he would surely fail her, not as a threat, but as a confession of his own brokenness. Her silence was a solemn promise to stay and gather the pieces. When he admitted his own feelings for her were a source of terror, the ground between them became perfectly level. In that quiet fortress, as their child slept, Elena's greatest fear was realized. The sterile lines of their agreement were bleeding into the profound chaos of a real life. Her last wall had just been turned to dust. What followed was a courtship executed with military precision. Damien, true to his word, orchestrated a series of encounters designed to systematically draw her into his world. A formal dinner dissolved into a conversation that bled into dawn. A day trip was shattered by the raw, genuine sound of her laughter at some foolish act of his. Another evening concluded with him carrying a sleeping Elena to her own bed, a tender gesture performed without an audience. Through these calculated maneuvers, an entirely unscripted intimacy began to bloom. Their daughter, Rosie, became the unwitting architect of this new reality, christening him Damien Daddy, and demanding nightly rituals that pulled Elena's heart into his gravity at an impossible speed. Her friend Sarah arrived to serve as the voice of unflinching truth, articulating the thoughts they both harbored. "You're getting in deep," she observed during a visit. "I am. Elena, this arrangement had an end date. I remember the terms." "Then what happens when the contract runs out?" Elena confessed. "We've discussed making it indefinite, converting this entire thing into a real marriage." Sarah was utterly stunned. "Are you being serious?" "It seems so. Nothing is final, but the idea is there." "Do you actually love him?" The question sliced through all pretense. "Yes," she breathed. "I believe I do." "But does he feel the same?" "He hasn't spoken the words, but his actions, the way he protects us, his devotion to Rosie, how his hand finds mine in public like I belong to him." A faint smile touched Elena's lips. "He doesn't speak in feelings, but his every move screams it." Sarah took her hand. "I just don't want you to end up broken." "Being broken is always on the table. The heart doesn't come with a warranty." Elena pictured herself 6 months prior, a shell of a person waiting for a savior. "I would rather risk the devastation than live a life haunted by what might have been." "Since when did you become so brave?" "I had to, for Rosie, and for myself." She added, "Damien started it. He sees me differently, and not as something fragile that needs mending, but as someone fully capable of her own rescue." "That is a shockingly profound thought," Sarah conceded. "I despise it, but it's profound." Elena let out a small laugh. "You don't despise it." "I despise that I'm beginning to like him, but not the thought itself." That evening, Elena found Damien in his study, hesitating in the doorway. "Am I interrupting?" His entire focus narrowed to her. "You have my undivided attention." That sounds suspiciously like a line a husband would use. "I'm in training." He pushed his work aside. "What is it?" Elena settled on the edge of his desk. "I was reviewing our contract, the clauses concerning year 3. Damien's expression was unreadable. "Continue." "My conclusion is that we need to tear up the agreement." The smallest of lines formed between his brows, elaborate. "Not the financial part, the debt, the payment that can remain, but the exit clause, the part that dictates an ending. I want it gone." "Elena, allow me to stop you. I am aware of our timeline. I know we promised to move slowly, but I don't need 3 years to understand what I want. I want this to be forever. I want a life with you that doesn't have a countdown clock. I want to create something real with no emergency exit hanging over our heads. Damien rose, closing the space between them. Are you certain? Because if we do this, if this becomes real, I am entirely in. There is no retreat. Good. I have no plans to go anywhere. He cupped her face in his hands. I love you. I've been waiting to say those words until I was sure you were ready to hear them. Elena's breath hitched. You love me? With a fierce, all-consuming power I never knew I possessed. He rested his forehead against hers. You fundamentally altered my world, Elena. This was just a structure before you and Rosie. The two of you made it a home. Tears began to trace paths down her face. I love you too, so much that it's terrifying. I know we can be terrified together. He kissed her then, a slow, deep vow of permanence. When they broke apart, she was smiling through her tears. So this is the new plan, she asked. We're making this official. We are already married. It doesn't get more official than that. You know what I'm asking. I do, and yes, this is the plan. He drew her into an embrace. I'll have my legal team draft a new clause, one that makes this permanent and binding. And the settlement, the money I was to receive. I'm establishing a trust for you. You will forever have your own security, your own freedom. I never want you to think of this as a cage. Elena pulled back, her gaze locked with his. This isn't a cage. For the first time in my life, I feel like I can actually breathe. 2 weeks later, new ink dried on a far simpler agreement, a document that merely secured Rosie's future and struck any mention of an ending. Damien's lawyers were openly bewildered. Elena's counsel was beaming with pride. Patricia Stern simply offered a sharp, knowing smile, as if she'd anticipated this outcome from the start. Congratulations, she remarked. This choice, at least, was made in unison. And it was the truth. The first contract was born of desperation. This one was a declaration of power. That night, they held a small ritual with their daughter under the night sky, a simple dinner. Rosie was oblivious to the moment's significance, but for Elena and Damien, the reality was profound. Watching her, they saw what they had managed to build from wreckage, a conclusion neither of them could have predicted. A functional marriage, a solid family, and a future that was finally real. 6 months later, Damien proposed in the traditional sense, not with a legal document, but with a bespoke ring and a speech that completely undid her. They stood on the very same spot to repeat their vows, but this time before people who genuinely loved them. Sarah, her maid of honor, wept more than Elena. Mrs. Kovac watched from the front row, radiating a quiet, fierce pride. Rosie, their flower girl, scattered petals with the gravity of a seasoned professional. When Damien's lips met hers, a true kiss, not the frigid transaction of before, the applause felt earned. In the aftermath, Elena was simply lost in the beautiful vertigo of her own metamorphosis. What are you thinking? Damien murmured. I was remembering 1.5 years ago, standing right here, utterly certain my life was over. And now I understand it was only just beginning. She looked at him, the man who had walked directly into her private hell. Thank you. For what? For seeing something in me that was worth fighting for, worth investing in, and worth loving. That was the simple part. You were always there. I was just intelligent enough to finally notice. Rosie darted over then, her dress already bearing the marks of some grand adventure. "Is it time for cake?" Elena's laugh was clear and bright. "Yes, my love, it's time for cake." They moved toward the celebration as a single entity, a family forged in crisis and now cemented by choice. For years to come, when people inquired how they met, Elena would offer a simplified narrative about fortunate timing. She would erase the first disastrous ceremony, the cold mechanics of a contract, truths that were irrelevant to the larger story. The larger story was about a woman who discovered her own strength, a man who finally lowered his defenses, and a little girl who was given a father. It was a story of two broken people who at last stopped running and built a legacy. And so Elena gave Rosie the unvarnished truth that the most extraordinary things can rise from the most devastating origins, and that action in the face of fear is the only action that truly matters. Damien then altered their reality, creating a foundation in Elena's name, a sanctuary for single mothers. Elena took the helm, transforming the pain of her past into a ladder for others. And Rosie? She grew up bathed in absolute security. Then, at 16, Damien formally adopted her, an act born not of obligation, but of pure love. And Elena, the woman once defined by shame, finally understood the lesson. You do not wait for a hero. With the right support and enough courage, you become your own savior. The key is to find someone strong enough to guard your back while you do it. She found him in the stone-faced stranger who entered her life and offered her a throne, not a rope. And that solitary distinction, it altered the course of everything.